As evening settles and thoughts begin to drift, let us embark together on a peaceful journey through time, exploring the rich and aromatic history of one of humanity's most beloved beverages. The story of coffee is a tale that spans continents and centuries, beginning in the misty highlands of Ethiopia and flowing like a gentle river through the ages to reach our modern coffee shops and morning rituals. Before we begin our historical voyage, I invite you to make yourself comfortable and join our growing community of history enthusiasts seeking peaceful learning. If you find yourself drawn into these gentle historical narratives, consider subscribing to our channel for more soothing journeys through time. As you settle in, perhaps leave a quiet comment sharing where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always wonderful to know we're connected across time zones in these peaceful moments of learning. And if you enjoy tonight's journey, a simple like helps others find these calming historical tales. Picture yourself in the ancient Ethiopian highlands, where the cool mountain air carries the scent of wild coffee cherries growing among the verdant slopes. It was here, over 1,000 years ago, that the first legends of coffee began to take shape. The most beloved tale speaks of a young goat herder named Kaldi, who noticed his goats dancing with unusual energy after eating bright red berries from a particular shrub. This observation, whether truth or mythology, marks the beginning of humanity's enduring relationship with coffee. As we drift through the centuries, we can imagine the quiet rustle of trade caravans carrying these precious beans across ancient routes, the gentle whispers of Sufi mystics who used coffee to maintain their nocturnal devotions, and the soft bubbling of the first coffee pots in the Arabian Peninsula. By the 15th century, coffee had found its way to Yemen, where it was cultivated in the mountainous terraces of Mocha, a name that would become forever intertwined with coffee's legacy. The story flows onward like a peaceful stream, carrying us to the bustling coffeehouses of Constantinople in the 16th century, where the air was thick with the aroma of freshly roasted beans and the quiet murmur of scholarly discussions. These establishments, known as cave canes, became sanctuaries of culture and conversation, spreading gradually across the Ottoman Empire and beyond. We can almost hear the gentle clink of cups in Venice's first coffeehouse, opened in 1645, and feel the growing excitement as coffee spread throughout Europe, transforming social customs and inspiring new ways of thinking. These European coffeehouses became known as penny universities, where, for the price of a cup of coffee, one could engage in enlightening discourse with minds of all backgrounds. As our journey continues, we witness the careful transplanting of coffee trees to new lands, first to the Dutch East Indies, then to the Americas, where coffee would find fertile ground and flourish. We see the dawn of the Brazilian coffee empire, the establishment of vast plantations in Colombia, and the gradual emergence of unique coffee cultures across the globe. The narrative brings us gently forward through time, through the Industrial Revolution and the birth of vacuum-sealed packaging, past the emergence of instant coffee in the 1900s, and into the aromatic realm of the modern coffee renaissance. We'll explore the rise of Starbucks in 1971, the growing appreciation for artisanal roasting techniques, and the thoughtful consideration of ethical sourcing that characterizes today's third-wave coffee culture. As we prepare to delve deeper into this rich history, let your mind drift with the steam rising from an imaginary cup, carrying you back through time to where our detailed journey begins, in the mystical highlands of ancient Ethiopia. In the lush, misty highlands of Ethiopia, where rolling hills are blanketed in vibrant green vegetation, our story of coffee begins more than 1,000 years ago. The region of Kaffa, with its fertile soil and perfect elevation, was home to wild coffee trees that grew abundantly in the understory of ancient forests. Here, in this tranquil landscape, the coffee plant first flourished in its natural habitat, its red cherries ripening under the dappled sunlight that filtered through the canopy above. According to a cherished Ethiopian legend that has been passed down through generations, it was a young goat herder named Kaldi who first discovered coffee's energizing properties sometime around the 9th century. As the gentle tale goes, Caldi noticed his goats behaving unusually energetically after eating bright red berries from a particular tree. The animals would dance and frolic with remarkable vigor, staying awake long into the night. Intrigued by this observation, Caldi decided to try the berries himself. Upon experiencing their invigorating effects, he gathered some of the fruits and brought them to a nearby monastery. The monks initially disapproved, casting the beans into a fire. Soon, an enticing aroma filled the monastery's quiet halls, the world's first experience of roasted coffee. The monks retrieved the beans from the fire, ground them up, and mixed them with hot water, creating a beverage that helped them stay alert during their long hours of prayer. In the centuries that followed, coffee remained a closely guarded secret of Ethiopian culture. Local communities developed their own ways of preparing and sharing coffee, creating elaborate ceremonies that celebrated the drink's spiritual and social significance. They would roast the beans in small pans over open fires, grind them by hand, and brew the coffee in special clay pots called jabinas, filling the air with aromatic whispers of what would eventually become a global phenomenon. As the gentle breezes rustled through the ancient Ethiopian highlands, legend tells of a humble goat herd named Caldi who noticed something peculiar about his flock one tranquil afternoon. His usually placid goats were behaving most unusually, prancing and leaping with unexpected energy among the hillside shrubs. The peaceful routine of watching over his herd had transformed into a curious spectacle of caprine choreography. Watching more closely, Caldi observed that this animated behavior seemed to occur after the goats had nibbled on the bright red berries of certain bushes scattered across the mountainside. These glossy cherries grew on evergreen shrubs that dotted the landscape, their branches reaching toward the warm African sun. The goats would eagerly seek out these berries, and soon after consuming them, they would begin their enthusiastic dancing. Historical accounts suggest this tale emerged sometime around the 9th century, though like many origin stories, its exact dating remains wrapped in the gentle mists of time. What makes this legend particularly compelling is how it captures the essential connection between the natural world and human discovery. The story goes that Caldi, intrigued by this phenomenon, decided to try the berries himself. Soon, he too felt an unusual sense of alertness and vitality. Sharing his discovery with a nearby monastery, the monks initially disapproved, casting the berries into a fire. Yet as the beans roasted, an enticing aroma filled the air, leading them to retrieve the beans, crush them, and dissolve them in hot water. This created what many consider the world's first cup of coffee, though the brewing method was far simpler than what we know today. This tale of the dancing goats has been passed down through generations, whispered around evening fires and shared in quiet moments of contemplation, becoming an integral part of coffee's rich cultural tapestry. While modern historians may debate its historical accuracy, the story beautifully illustrates humanity's age-old relationship with this remarkable plant. In the lush highlands of Ethiopia, coffee cultivation and consumption developed into deeply meaningful cultural traditions that would endure for centuries. The gentle art of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, known as Jabina Buna, became an integral part of daily life, bringing people together in a ritual of hospitality and community that continues to this day. In these early times, coffee preparation was a mindful, unhurried process that began with the careful selection of fresh green coffee beans. Women, who traditionally performed the ceremony, would slowly roast the beans in a flat pan over hot coals, moving them constantly while sharing news and stories with gathered family and friends. The rich, earthy aroma of roasting coffee would fill the air, signaling to neighbors that they were welcome to join. The freshly roasted beans would be ground by hand using a wooden mortar and pestle, creating a rhythmic sound that became synonymous with the ceremony itself. The ground coffee would then be gently added to water in a traditional clay pot called a jabina, with its distinctive long neck and round bottom, where it would be brought to boil multiple times. The ceremony typically involved 3 rounds of serving, each with its own name: Abal, Tona, and Baraka. Each round was believed to bring a different blessing to those participating. Small cups called sini would be arranged on a tray, and the coffee would be poured in a single stream from about a foot above the cups, requiring skill and practice to achieve the perfect pour. This ceremonial approach to coffee preparation spread throughout Ethiopia's Orthodox Christian communities and beyond, becoming an essential part of social and spiritual life. The ceremony was not merely about drinking coffee, but rather about taking time to pause, connect, and honor the bonds between people. The practice created a peaceful space for meditation, conversation, and the strengthening of community ties. As coffee's influence spread beyond Ethiopia in the 15th century, it found an important place within the mystical traditions of Sufi monasteries across Yemen and the Arabian Peninsula. In these serene, spiritual havens, where the gentle sounds of prayer and meditation filled the air, Sufi mystics discovered that coffee could help them maintain their spiritual vigils and achieve heightened states of devotional awareness during their nighttime ceremonies known as dhikr. The quiet halls of these monasteries became some of the earliest spaces where coffee was cultivated not just as a beverage, but as a spiritual aid. The monks would carefully roast the beans over small fires, the aromatic smoke wafting through their stone corridors, before grinding them by hand in the pre-dawn hours. They would then prepare the drink in large copper pots, sharing it communally before their extended periods of prayer and contemplation. Particularly in the Shadhiliya Sufi order, founded by Ali ibn Omar al-Shadhili, coffee became deeply integrated into religious practice. According to peaceful monastery records that have survived through time, the monks found that coffee helped them maintain their focus during long nights of meditation and prayer, allowing them to stay present and alert while seeking divine connection. The gentle ripples of coffee's influence spread outward from these monasteries, as traveling Sufis shared the beverage with other religious communities. Gradually, the drink began to take on broader spiritual and social significance throughout Yemen and beyond. The monks' careful attention to coffee's preparation and their recognition of its contemplative benefits helped establish many of the earliest ritualistic aspects of coffee preparation and consumption that would later influence coffee cultures around the world. This period of coffee's history in Sufi monasteries created lasting associations between coffee and spiritual practice, mindfulness, and community that would continue to resonate through the centuries that followed. The quiet, reverent approach to coffee cultivation and preparation in these sacred spaces helped establish enduring traditions of careful attention to coffee's craft. As coffee's influence spread beyond Ethiopia and Sufi monasteries, the Arabian Peninsula became the crucial gateway through which coffee would enter the wider world. In the cool, misty port of Mocha in Yemen, coffee found its first large-scale cultivation outside of Africa in the early 1400s. The conditions were ideal high-elevation terraces carved into mountainsides, where coffee trees could flourish in the gentle shade of other crops. The Yemeni people developed sophisticated methods of processing coffee cherries, carefully drying them on stone patios under the warm Arabian sun. They discovered that gentle roasting of the beans in metal pans brought forth deep, complex flavors that enhanced the drinking experience. The port of Mocha became synonymous with coffee excellence, as merchants from across the region came seeking these precious beans. Throughout the 1400s and into the 1500s, coffee cultivation spread across Yemen's mountainous regions, with local farmers perfecting their growing techniques through generations of careful observation. The drink became deeply woven into daily life, with coffee houses called kave-khane emerging as gathering places where people would come together to share conversation, music, and games while sipping from small cups of the aromatic brew. The Yemeni port authorities carefully protected their monopoly on coffee cultivation, allowing only processed beans to leave their shores, never viable seeds that could be grown elsewhere. Yet despite these precautions, coffee's journey was destined to continue. As traders and travelers carried stories of this remarkable drink along ancient trade routes, demand grew steadily across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, setting the stage for coffee's eventual spread into the great cities of the Ottoman Empire. In these early centuries of cultivation, the gentle rhythm of coffee farming became part of the seasonal cycles in Yemen's mountain villages, where the ripening of coffee cherries marked time as surely as the rising and setting of the sun. The careful tending of coffee trees, the methodical harvesting of ripe cherries, and the patient processing of beans created patterns of life that would endure for generations. As coffee's presence grew throughout the Arabian Peninsula in the late 1400s, the port city of Mocha in Yemen emerged as the first documented location of systematic coffee cultivation. In this gentle coastal region, where warm breezes carried the salt spray from the Red Sea, Yemeni farmers discovered that the hardy coffee plants could thrive in the terraced mountainsides of their rugged terrain. The careful documentation of these early cultivation practices was preserved in manuscripts from the Rasulid dynasty, which ruled Yemen during this pivotal period. These texts describe how farmers would tenderly nurture the delicate coffee seedlings, protecting them from the harsh afternoon sun with the shade of larger trees. The sound of water trickling through ancient irrigation channels provided a peaceful rhythm to their daily work. In the mountain valleys around Mocha, farmers developed sophisticated methods for growing coffee at various elevations, learning through generations of experience how the altitude affected the flavor of the beans. They noticed that plants growing in higher elevations produced denser, more complex-tasting beans, while those in lower regions matured more quickly but with lighter flavors. The Yemeni cultivators created detailed systems for harvesting and processing the coffee cherries, establishing methods that would influence coffee production for centuries to come. They would carefully handpick the ripe red cherries, laying them out to dry in the warm sun on smooth stone patios, where the gentle rustling of the beans being turned became a familiar sound in these communities. This period marked the beginning of coffee as an agricultural commodity, as Yemeni merchants began to understand its potential as a valuable trade good. The port of Mocha became synonymous with coffee excellence, its name forever linked to the rich, chocolate-like notes found in the finest Yemen coffee beans. The careful methods and farming practices developed here would soon spread across the seas, carried by traders to distant shores, forever changing the story of coffee's journey through history. As coffee cultivation took root in Yemen and spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula, people began developing increasingly sophisticated methods for preparing and enjoying the precious beans. In these early days, the most common preparation method was quite simple. Green coffee cherries were fermented in water until soft. Then the entire fruit was consumed. This gradually evolved into brewing the dried beans themselves, leading to more refined techniques. By the late 1400s, coffee preparers in Yemen had developed what became known as the Kisher method, where the dried coffee cherry husks were boiled in water with spices like ginger, cinnamon, and cardamom. This aromatic drink gained popularity for its gentle sweetness and complex flavors. Meanwhile, others began experimenting with roasting the actual coffee beans, discovering how heat transformed their character. The traditional Arabian preparation method that emerged involved gently roasting green coffee beans in a shallow pan over a fire, then grinding them finely with a mortar and pestle. This powder would be mixed with hot water in special copper or brass vessels called dala, creating what we now know as Turkish or Arabic coffee. The mixture was brought just to a boil several times, allowing the grounds to settle before being poured into small cups. As coffee houses began appearing across the Middle East in the early 1500s, baristas of the day refined these techniques further. They learned to control roasting times and temperatures to bring out different flavor profiles. Some added aromatic spices directly to the grounds, while others experimented with filtering methods using cloth or fine mesh. The ritual of preparation became an art form, with skilled coffee makers taking pride in their individual techniques and secret spice blends. This period of methodological development established fundamental principles that would influence coffee preparation for centuries to come. The importance of proper roasting, grinding fresh before brewing, and the relationship between water temperature and extraction. These early innovators laid the groundwork for the countless brewing methods that would follow. As coffee's presence grew throughout the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, it became deeply woven into the fabric of Islamic society. In the tranquil spaces of the first coffee houses, known as kave-khane, Muslims would gather to share in thoughtful conversation while sipping the aromatic brew. These establishments became known as schools of the wise, where scholars would softly discuss philosophy and poetry as the gentle aroma of freshly roasted beans filled the air. Coffee found a particularly meaningful role during Ramadan, when Muslims fast from dawn until sunset. The energizing beverage helped the faithful stay awake for evening prayers and religious studies, its warm comfort providing sustenance during the long nights of contemplation and worship. Some Sufi mystics even incorporated coffee into their spiritual practices, finding that it enhanced their ability to achieve states of deep meditation and divine connection. In the quiet corners of medieval Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad, coffee ceremonies became elaborate social rituals. Skilled servers, known as kaviji, would carefully prepare the drink using long-handled copper vessels called ibrik, the quiet bubbling of brewing coffee becoming a familiar sound in homes and gathering places. The sharing of coffee became a symbol of hospitality and friendship, with hosts taking great pride in serving their guests the finest possible brew. Though some conservative religious scholars initially questioned coffee's permissibility under Islamic law, by the late 15th century, most had come to accept and even embrace it. The drink was declared halal, and coffee's ability to enhance alertness and concentration during prayer and study was seen as a divine blessing. This acceptance helped spread coffee culture throughout the Muslim world, from the bustling ports of Yemen to the grand palaces of Constantinople, where the gentle clinking of cups and quiet conversations became the soundtrack of daily life. As coffee's popularity grew throughout the Islamic world in the late 1400s and early 1500s, a remarkable new institution began to emerge in the great cities of Mecca and Cairo, the coffee house. These establishments, known as kave-khane, would forever change the social fabric of urban life in the Middle East and later spread across the world. In Mecca, the first coffee houses appeared around 1511, offering spaces where people could gather to enjoy the stimulating beverage while engaging in conversation, listening to music, or playing chess. The warm, aromatic atmosphere of these early establishments created an entirely new kind of social space, distinct from both taverns and mosques. The soft murmur of voices would mix with the gentle bubbling of coffee being prepared, while the rich scent of freshly roasted beans filled the air. Cairo's first coffee houses opened shortly after, around 1530, and quickly became beloved institutions. The city's coffee houses were often beautifully decorated with intricate tiles and comfortable cushions, creating welcoming spaces where people from different social classes could meet and mingle. Merchants would discuss trade while scholars debated philosophy, and poets would share their latest verses with attentive audiences. These early coffee houses served as informal centers of news and information exchange, with patrons sharing stories and updates from distant lands. They became known as schools of the wise, where knowledge and ideas could flow as freely as the coffee itself. The steady stream of customers throughout the day created a constant, gentle rhythm of social interaction and intellectual discourse. However, this new social institution also faced opposition from religious and political authorities, who worried about the potential for dissent and social upheaval in these gathering places. Yet despite periodic attempts to close them, the coffee houses proved too deeply embedded in urban culture to suppress, establishing a model that would soon spread to Constantinople and beyond. As coffee culture flourished in the Arab world, it found an eager embrace within the Ottoman Empire during the 1500s. The Ottomans, with their vast territory stretching across 3 continents, became instrumental in spreading coffee beyond its Arabian origins. In Constantinople, now Istanbul, the first coffee house opened in 1555 in the district of Tadakale, establishing a model that would soon proliferate throughout the empire. These Ottoman coffee houses, known as kahvehanes, became essential gathering places where people from all walks of life would sit on comfortable cushions, sipping their dark, aromatic beverages while engaging in conversation, playing backgammon, or listening to storytellers. The gentle bubbling of water pipes and the soft clink of copper coffee pots created a soothing atmosphere that encouraged both relaxation and intellectual discourse. The introduction of coffee to Europe came through various routes, but Venice, with its bustling maritime trade, played a crucial role. Venetian merchants, who had long established trading relationships with the Ottoman Empire, began bringing coffee beans to their city in the early 1600s. The exotic beverage initially faced some resistance, with some Christian clergy suggesting it was the bitter invention of Satan. However, in 1600, Pope Clement VII, after tasting coffee himself, gave it his blessing, declaring it a Christian beverage. As coffee made its way through European ports and cities, each culture adapted its preparation and serving methods. The first European coffee house opened in Venice in 1645, and similar establishments soon appeared in other major cities. These venues became known as penny universities, because for the price of a cup of coffee, patrons could engage in enlightening conversations and access the latest news and information. The warm, inviting aroma of freshly roasted coffee beans began to permeate European cities, marking the beginning of a new era in coffee's global journey. As the Ottoman Empire expanded across the Middle East and into Europe, coffee culture flowed along with it like a fragrant river, seeping into new territories and taking root in diverse societies. In the peaceful courtyards of Constantinople, now Istanbul, coffee became not just a beverage, but an essential part of daily life and social customs. The gentle ritual of coffee preparation and sharing became deeply woven into the fabric of Ottoman hospitality. By the mid-1500s, the sweet aroma of roasting coffee beans drifted through the winding streets of Ottoman cities, where skilled kavasai, or coffee makers, practiced their craft with careful attention. In their shops, copper sieves simmered over glowing coals, as they prepared the thick, unfiltered coffee that would become known as Turkish coffee. The method was unhurried and deliberate. Fine coffee grounds combined with water and sometimes sugar, heated slowly until a rich foam formed on top. The Ottomans established formal customs around coffee service, with specialized cups called fincan, delicate silver holders called zarf, and ornate copper serving trays. In the peaceful quiet of homes and palaces, coffee was served first to the eldest or most honored guest, accompanied by a glass of water and perhaps a sweet lokum, or Turkish delight. The tradition of fortune-telling through coffee grounds, known as tasseography, emerged during this period, adding an element of mysticism to the daily ritual. Ottoman coffee culture spread gradually through diplomatic gifts and trade, reaching new territories as the empire expanded. From the Balkans to North Africa, local variations emerged while maintaining the core elements of Ottoman coffee traditions. This cultural exchange would later influence European coffee customs, as travelers and merchants carried these practices westward, setting the stage for coffee's next chapter in Vienna and beyond. As coffee's influence spread through the Ottoman Empire, European travelers and merchants began encountering this intriguing new beverage in their journeys to the East. In the late 1500s, European visitors to Constantinople would write home with fascinated descriptions of the dark, aromatic drink they discovered in the city's countless coffee houses. These early accounts often described coffee as a mysterious, black water that kept Muslims alert during long prayer sessions. One of the earliest detailed European accounts came from German physician Leonhard Rauwolf, who traveled through the Levant in 1573 and documented his experience with coffee in his travel journal. He described it as a beverage as black as ink, useful against numerous illnesses, particularly those of the stomach. The gentle warmth and subtle bitterness of the drink initially puzzled European palates, accustomed as they were to wine and ale. Venetian merchants, with their extensive trading networks throughout the Mediterranean, were among the first Europeans to regularly encounter coffee. Through their bustling port city, stories of this exotic beverage gradually filtered into wider European consciousness. By the early 1600s, small quantities of coffee beans began arriving in Venice's maritime warehouses, carefully packed in burlap sacks that had journeyed across the seas from distant Ottoman ports. European botanists and scholars became increasingly curious about this new substance. They carefully examined the strange dark beans, debated their properties, and attempted to understand the complex preparation methods they observed in Ottoman territories. Some early European medical treatises suggested coffee could cure various ailments, while others warned it might be dangerous to health. Despite initial uncertainties, the allure of coffee's unique taste and energizing effects gradually began to overcome European skepticism, setting the stage for its eventual embrace by Western society. As coffee made its way into European society, it faced significant religious and social opposition, stirring controversies that would ripple through communities for decades. In Venice in 1615, some Catholic clergy condemned coffee as the bitter invention of Satan, believing its stimulating effects and its association with Islam made it suspicious and potentially sinful. They urged Pope Clement VII to ban the beverage among Christians, leading to a fascinating moment in coffee's history. The Pope, intrigued by this mysterious drink causing such debate, requested to taste it himself. After sampling coffee, he found it so delightful that, rather than condemning it, he gave it papal approval, supposedly declaring that it would be a pity to let non-believers have exclusive use of this enchanting beverage. This blessing helped ease religious tensions surrounding coffee, though social controversies continued to simmer. In England, women grew increasingly concerned about coffee houses keeping their husbands away from home. In 1674, the women's petition against coffee emerged, claiming that coffee made men idle, impotent, and too talkative, while neglecting their domestic duties. The petition's language was colorful yet earnest, describing how men would spend whole days in houses full of warm vapors, which are in no way profitable to the body. In Germany, some rulers viewed coffee as a threat to beer consumption, and therefore to their grain revenues. Frederick the Great of Prussia attempted to restrict coffee consumption to the nobility and wealthy merchants, sending out coffee sniffers to detect the illegal roasting of coffee beans among common citizens. These restrictions created a thriving underground coffee market, with people secretly roasting beans in their basements and attics, filling narrow city streets with the faint, telling aroma of illicit coffee roasting. As coffee made its way into European consciousness, the maritime Republic of Venice emerged as a crucial gateway for this enchanting beverage into Western Europe. The city's unique position as a bridge between East and West, with its skilled merchants and vast trading networks, made it perfectly suited to become the continent's first major coffee trading hub in the late 1500s and early 1600s. Venetian traders, who had long maintained strong commercial relationships with the Ottoman Empire, began bringing small quantities of coffee beans back to their lagoon city. The precious cargo would arrive on ships laden with exotic spices and textiles from distant lands, their holds filled with the aromatic beans that would soon transform European social life. The gentle lapping of water against the gondolas in Venice's canals mixed with the growing bustle of merchants discussing this novel commodity in the Rialto markets. In 1580, Venetian botanists and physicians began studying coffee's properties, carefully documenting their findings in detailed manuscripts that still survive today. The city's wealthy inhabitants gradually developed a taste for the dark, warming beverage, preparing it in their homes using methods learned from Turkish merchants. The sweet, rich aroma of roasting coffee beans slowly began to drift through Venice's narrow alleyways and across its elegant squares. By 1615, Venice had established itself as Europe's primary coffee port, with specialized warehouses along the Grand Canal, storing huge quantities of beans from Ottoman territories. The city's skilled craftsmen began producing refined copper and brass coffee pots, creating distinctively Venetian interpretations of Middle Eastern brewing vessels. These beautiful implements would soon find their way into noble households across Europe, carrying Venice's influence far beyond its waters. The steady flow of coffee through Venice's ports helped establish regular trading routes that would endure for generations, laying the groundwork for coffee's eventual spread throughout the continent. In the quiet early morning hours, as dawn light touched the city's golden domes, boats laden with coffee would glide silently through the misty canals, beginning another day in Venice's flourishing coffee trade. As coffee's popularity spread across Europe in the 1600s and 1700s, a remarkable transformation began to unfold, quietly reshaping the social fabric of an entire continent. The gentle aroma of freshly roasted beans wafted through narrow cobblestone streets, as coffeehouses emerged one by one, like flowers blooming in spring, first in Venice, then London, Paris, Vienna, and Amsterdam. In London, where the first coffeehouse opened in 1652, these establishments became known as penny universities, because for the price of a cup of coffee, one could sit for hours, engaging in thoughtful discourse with scholars, merchants, and artists. The soft murmur of intellectual conversation filled these rooms, where newspapers were readily available, and ideas flowed as freely as the dark, steaming beverage that inspired them. Paris saw its first coffeehouse, Le Procope, open its doors in 1686, with its marble tables and gilded mirrors creating an atmosphere of refined elegance. Here, Enlightenment philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau would spend countless hours, sipping their coffee while crafting the ideas that would help shape modern thought. The gentle clink of cups against saucers provided a soothing backdrop to their contemplations. In Vienna, after the Turkish siege of 1683, abandoned bags of coffee beans led to the creation of the city's famous coffeehouse culture. The skilled hands of Ukrainian military officer Georg Franz Kolskitsky established the first Viennese coffeehouse, where he introduced the practice of filtering coffee and adding milk and honey, creating drinks that would become beloved traditions. These coffeehouses became peaceful havens where social barriers dissolved, and new ideas could take root and flourish. Like quiet gardens of thought, they nurtured the seeds of scientific discovery, artistic expression, and political discourse, while providing a warm refuge from the bustling streets outside. The gentle revolution they sparked would continue to influence European society for centuries to come. As coffee's popularity grew across Europe in the 1600s, a remarkable transformation began to unfold in the continent's urban centers. Coffeehouses, those welcoming havens of warmth and conversation, spread like gentle ripples across the cultural landscape. In London, the first coffeehouse opened its doors in 1652, established by a Greek servant named Pasqua Risset in St. Michael's Alley. The soothing aroma of freshly roasted beans soon became a familiar comfort in the narrow streets of the city. Within just a few decades, London would host hundreds of these establishments, each one a softly buzzing hub of intellectual discourse and social connection. They became known as penny universities. As for the price of a cup of coffee, patrons could engage in enlightening conversations with scholars, merchants, and artists. The gentle murmur of discussion would fill these spaces from morning until night. In Paris, the Café Procope, founded in 1686 by the Sicilian Francesco Procopio de Coltelli, brought an air of sophistication and refinement to coffee culture. Its marble tables and elegant mirrors created an atmosphere of quiet luxury that attracted luminaries like Voltaire and Rousseau, who would spend hours in contemplative discussion over steaming cups of coffee. Meanwhile, in Vienna, the aftermath of the Ottoman siege in 1683 led to the establishment of that city's first coffeehouse by Johannes Diodato, an Armenian merchant. The Viennese elevated coffee service to an art form, with their tradition of serving each cup on a silver tray alongside a glass of water. The soft clink of porcelain cups and the whispered conversations of patrons became part of the city's daily rhythm. These coffeehouses served as peaceful sanctuaries where news was shared, business was conducted, and creative minds found inspiration. They became such an integral part of European society that they were often called schools of wisdom, where the gentle exchange of ideas helped shape the intellectual landscape of the Enlightenment. As coffeehouses flourished across Europe in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, they became instrumental in fostering the intellectual revolution known as the Enlightenment. These warm, inviting spaces, filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, served as informal academies where great minds gathered to exchange ideas and debate philosophy, science, and politics. In London's coffeehouses, brilliant thinkers like Isaac Newton and Edmund Halley would meet regularly, the gentle clinking of coffee cups accompanying their discussions of mathematics and astronomy. The stimulating effects of coffee helped fuel long hours of rational discourse, while the welcoming atmosphere encouraged people from different social classes to engage in conversation as equals. The famous Café Procope in Paris became a central gathering place for Enlightenment philosophers. Voltaire, who reportedly consumed up to 40 cups of coffee per day, would sit for hours at his regular table, penning his revolutionary ideas while sipping from his favorite beverage. Diderot and Rousseau also frequented this establishment, where the combination of caffeine and conversation helped shape their influential works. In these coffeehouses, the morning ritual of reading newspapers and discussing current events became deeply intertwined with Enlightenment ideals of reason and progress. The steady stream of coffee served in delicate porcelain cups helped create an atmosphere of clarity and focus, where new scientific theories could be debated and political reforms could be contemplated. The coffee culture of the Enlightenment era established a lasting connection between coffee consumption and intellectual pursuit. As people gathered in these spaces, breathing in the familiar scent of roasted beans and sharing in stimulating discourse, they were participating in a transformation of European society that would have lasting effects on modern thought and culture. The gentle murmur of serious discussion, punctuated by the soft sounds of coffee being prepared and served, became the soundtrack to an age of reason and discovery. As coffee's popularity grew across Europe, colonial powers began to take a keen interest in controlling its production. The Dutch were among the first to recognize coffee's immense commercial potential, carefully cultivating coffee plants in their botanical gardens in Amsterdam. In 1696, after years of patient experimentation, they successfully transported coffee plants to their colony of Java, establishing the first major coffee plantations outside of Arabia and Ethiopia. The Dutch East India Company's success in Java inspired other European powers to develop their own coffee enterprises. The French soon followed, introducing coffee to their Caribbean colonies, particularly Martinique, where in 1723, a young naval officer named Gabriel de Clue famously transported a single coffee plant across the Atlantic. During the long and challenging voyage, he shared his limited water ration with the precious seedling, nurturing it through storms and hostile conditions. This single plant would become the parent of millions of coffee trees throughout the Caribbean and South America. The Portuguese, too, began cultivating coffee in Brazil around 1727, when Francisco de Melo Palheta obtained coffee seeds from French Guiana. Legend tells of how he charmed the governor's wife, who secretly gave him coffee seeds hidden within a bouquet of flowers. This romantic gesture would lead to Brazil becoming the world's largest coffee producer, a position it still holds today. Throughout the 18th century, colonial powers established vast coffee plantations across their territories, transforming tropical landscapes into carefully ordered rows of coffee trees. The cultivation of coffee became deeply intertwined with colonial expansion, trade routes, and unfortunately, the exploitation of enslaved labor. The gentle rustle of coffee leaves in the tropical breeze masked the harsh realities of colonial production systems, as European powers competed to control this increasingly valuable commodity that had become essential to their economies and cultures. As coffee became firmly established across Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, a unique and sophisticated café culture began to blossom in the continent's major cities. In Vienna, the legendary Café Central opened its doors in 1876, becoming a cherished institution where writers, artists, and intellectuals would spend long hours in contemplative conversation amid the gentle clinking of porcelain cups and the warm aroma of freshly roasted coffee. Paris, too, developed its own distinctive café society. The historic Café Procope, established in 1686, welcomed luminaries like Voltaire and Rousseau, who would sit for hours at marble-top tables, sharing ideas over steaming cups of coffee. The comfortable leather chairs and ornate mirrors created an atmosphere of refined elegance that encouraged both serious discussion and peaceful reflection. In Italy, the café culture took a different form, with the development of standing espresso bars where patrons would quickly consume their perfectly crafted drinks while engaging in brief but animated conversations. The ritual of the morning espresso became an essential part of Italian daily life, with the sophisticated barrel-shaped espresso machines producing their characteristic gentle hissing sounds and rich aromas. The European cafe became more than just a place to drink coffee. It transformed into a unique social institution where class boundaries could temporarily dissolve. The soft murmur of conversation would fill these spaces from morning until night, as people from all walks of life gathered to read newspapers, play chess, or simply watch the world go by through large windows that looked out onto busy streets. This culture spread gradually across the continent, each region adding its own touches to the cafe experience. In Budapest, the grand cafes featured elegant chandeliers and live piano music, while Amsterdam's establishments maintained a more modest, intimate atmosphere that encouraged quiet contemplation and peaceful conversation. As European powers recognized coffee's immense economic potential, the 18th century witnessed a dramatic expansion of coffee cultivation across colonial territories. The gentle rustle of coffee trees would soon spread far beyond their Arabian and African origins, taking root in rich volcanic soils and humid tropical climates around the globe. The Dutch East India Company led these early cultivation efforts, carefully nurturing coffee plants in their colonial botanical gardens. From their initial success growing coffee in Java, they gradually established flourishing plantations across their East Indies territories. The morning mist would drift through endless rows of coffee trees, where workers methodically tended the precious crops that would eventually fill European cups. French missionaries and colonists carried coffee seedlings to the Caribbean islands, where the warm climate and fertile soil proved ideal for cultivation. On the island of Martinique, Gabriel Declue famously shared his drinking water with a single coffee plant during a challenging ocean voyage in 1723. From that one surviving plant, coffee cultivation would spread throughout the Caribbean and into Central and South America. The Spanish and Portuguese empires also embraced coffee cultivation, establishing vast plantations in their territories. In Brazil, coffee trees began their slow march across the landscape, transforming the country into what would become the world's largest coffee producer. The gentle afternoon rains nourished the growing plants, while the careful hands of workers tended to each stage of cultivation. This period of expansion brought both prosperity and profound social change. The demand for labor led to the tragic expansion of slavery on coffee plantations, while colonial powers competed for control of suitable growing regions. Traditional coffee-growing regions in Yemen and Ethiopia watched as their once exclusive crop became a global commodity, cultivated across distant shores where European powers had planted their flags. In the early 1700s, the Dutch East India Company established extensive coffee plantations across their colonial territories, particularly in Java and Ceylon, now known as Indonesia and Sri Lanka. The rich volcanic soils and tropical climate of these regions proved ideal for coffee cultivation, leading to a remarkable expansion of production that would shape the future of coffee forever. On the verdant slopes of Java, Dutch colonists carefully developed systematic cultivation methods, teaching local workers to tend to the delicate coffee plants that thrived in the island's fertile earth. The gentle morning mist would drift through the orderly rows of coffee trees, where workers methodically harvested the bright red cherries by hand. The Dutch introduced strict quality control measures, ensuring only the finest beans were selected for export to European markets. In Ceylon, the Dutch established similarly successful plantations, taking advantage of the island's varied elevations and favorable growing conditions. The morning air would fill with the subtle fragrance of coffee blossoms, while the afternoon rains nourished the growing cherries. By 1750, the Dutch colonies had become the world's leading coffee producers, with Java coffee particularly prized in Amsterdam's bustling coffee houses. The success of these plantations led to the term Java becoming synonymous with coffee itself, a linguistic legacy that persists to this day. The Dutch trading ships would sail across the Indian Ocean, their holds filled with carefully packed sacks of beans, bringing the aromatic cargo to eager merchants in European ports. In the cool warehouses of Amsterdam, traders would sample the latest shipments, their experienced palates determining the value of each harvest. The Dutch cultivation system, though ultimately built on colonial exploitation, established important agricultural practices and quality standards that would influence coffee production worldwide. Their meticulous attention to cultivation, processing, and trading would leave an indelible mark on global coffee culture, creating patterns of production and commerce that would endure for centuries to come. As the Dutch expanded their coffee cultivation across Asia, the French were establishing their own coffee empire in the Caribbean. In 1723, a young French naval officer named Gabriel de Clue obtained a single coffee plant from the Royal Botanical Gardens in Paris. With great care, he transported this precious cargo across the Atlantic to Martinique, sharing his limited water rations with the plant during the long and challenging voyage. This single plant would become the parent of millions of coffee trees throughout the Caribbean islands. The warm, humid climate and rich volcanic soil of Martinique proved ideal for coffee cultivation. Within just a few decades, the island was home to thousands of flourishing coffee plantations, their emerald green slopes stretching toward the crystal blue Caribbean sky. From Martinique, coffee cultivation spread to other French Caribbean territories. The neighboring island of Guadeloupe embraced coffee farming, its gentle mountain valleys soon filled with orderly rows of coffee trees. The French colonists developed sophisticated cultivation techniques, carefully timing their plantings to coincide with the seasonal rains and protecting their precious crops from tropical storms. However, this agricultural success came at a tremendous human cost. The French coffee plantations relied heavily on enslaved labor, with thousands of people forced to work in harsh conditions, tending to the coffee trees from dawn until dusk. The rhythmic sounds of workers singing in the fields masked the deep pain of their circumstances, while the sweet aroma of coffee blossoms drifted through air heavy with complexity and contradiction. By the late 1700s, Haiti, then known as Saint-Domingue, had become the world's largest coffee producer, supplying half of the world's coffee. The French colonial system had created a vast network of plantations, their success built upon both agricultural innovation and human exploitation, forever changing the landscape of coffee cultivation in the Western Hemisphere. As coffee cultivation spread across the colonial world in the early 1700s, a pivotal chapter was about to unfold in Brazil. The story begins in 1727, when Francisco de Melo Palheta, a Brazilian military officer, was sent on a diplomatic mission to French Guiana. While there, he became fascinated by the flourishing coffee plantations he encountered. According to gentle whispers of history, Palheta cultivated a romantic relationship with the governor's wife, who secretly gifted him coffee seedlings hidden among flowers. These precious plants would transform Brazil's destiny, carried safely across borders to the fertile Brazilian soil where they would take root and thrive in the warm, humid climate. The first coffee plantations were established in the northern state of Pará, where the seeds found a welcoming home in the rich Amazonian soil. Gradually, like a slow-moving stream, coffee cultivation drifted southward through the decades, eventually reaching the valleys of Rio de Janeiro by the 1770s. The moderate temperatures and rolling hillsides proved ideal for coffee trees, which flourished in the Brazilian landscape. As the gentle morning mists rolled across these emerging plantations, Brazil's coffee industry began its steady growth. The combination of suitable climate, abundant land, and available labor created perfect conditions for what would become the world's largest coffee empire. Small farms slowly expanded into larger estates, known as fazendas, where coffee trees stretched endlessly toward the horizon. By the early 1800s, coffee had become Brazil's growing pride, with production increasing year by year. The port of Rio de Janeiro bustled with activity as ships arrived to carry Brazilian coffee to distant shores. The sweet aroma of coffee cherries being processed filled the air, while workers carefully tended to the growing number of coffee trees that would soon make Brazil the world's leading coffee producer, a position it would hold for generations to come. As coffee plantations expanded across colonial territories in the 17th and 18th centuries, they became inextricably linked with the tragic reality of the transatlantic slave trade. The labor-intensive nature of coffee cultivation required vast numbers of workers, leading European colonial powers to forcibly transport millions of enslaved Africans to work on plantations throughout the Americas and Caribbean. In the gentle hills of Brazil's coffee-growing regions, the exploitation of enslaved workers formed the foundation of the emerging coffee empire. The humid air filled with the sounds of hands carefully selecting ripe coffee cherries, while overseers maintained strict control over the exhausting work schedules. Between 1800 and 1850, Brazil imported more than 1.3 million enslaved people, with many working on coffee plantations in the Paraíba Valley and later in São Paulo state. The French colony of Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, illustrated the deep connection between coffee and slavery. By 1789, the colony had nearly 800 coffee plantations worked by enslaved laborers, producing half the world's coffee. The harsh conditions and brutal treatment eventually contributed to the Haitian Revolution, which would reshape both the coffee trade and colonial economics. Similar patterns emerged across the Caribbean islands and Dutch colonies, where the morning mist over coffee-covered hillsides masked the human cost of production. The profits from coffee helped fund Europe's industrial revolution, while the plantation system created lasting social and economic inequalities that would influence societies for generations to come. Even after the formal abolition of slavery in various regions, coffee production continued to rely on exploitative labor practices. The legacy of this period can still be seen in the economic disparities and land ownership patterns across coffee-growing regions today, reminding us how this beloved beverage's history intertwines with complex and often painful human experiences. As the world entered the 19th century, coffee production and consumption were transformed by the sweeping changes of the Industrial Revolution. The gentle whir of steam-powered machinery began replacing the methodical hand processing of coffee beans, while new innovations in transportation and manufacturing forever changed how people experienced their daily brew. In the misty mornings of 1806, the first commercial coffee roasting operation opened in New York City, marking the beginning of mass-produced roasted coffee. The rich aroma of roasting beans would soon become a familiar scent in urban centers across America and Europe. By the 1820s, the soft clicking and grinding of early mechanical coffee mills began to replace the traditional mortar and pestle in homes and shops. Perhaps the most transformative development came in 1864, when Jabez Burns patented his self-emptying coffee roaster. The steady, rhythmic motion of this new machine could continuously roast beans with unprecedented efficiency, while keeping them moving to ensure even heating. This gentle innovation allowed for the consistent roasting of larger quantities than ever before. The soothing whistle of steam engines carried coffee across continents with increasing speed, while advances in packaging and preservation helped maintain its freshness. Companies like Folgers, founded in 1850, began building their empires on the ability to deliver reliably uniform coffee to customers far from the roasting source. The warm glow of gas lighting illuminated the ever-growing number of coffee houses, which now served standardized cups to an expanding middle class. In the quiet workshops of inventors and engineers, new brewing methods were taking shape. The peaceful percolation of water through coffee grounds would soon be joined by the soft hiss of early espresso machines, as technological advancement continued to reshape humanity's relationship with this ancient beverage. These innovations laid the groundwork for the modern coffee industry, while forever changing how people prepared and enjoyed their daily cup of comfort. As coffee production expanded during the Industrial Revolution, innovative minds turned their attention to improving the roasting process. Before the 1800s, coffee was typically roasted in small batches over open fires or in simple hand-cranked drums. The gentle crackling of beans and wafting aroma would fill homes and small shops as roasters carefully monitored the process by sight, sound, and smell. In 1864, Jabez Burns of New York City patented a significant advancement: the first commercial coffee roaster that could continuously turn beans without requiring manual effort. The Burns roaster, as it became known, used a mechanical arm to steadily rotate the drum while hot air circulated evenly around the beans. The soft whirring of the machine's gears and the steady tumbling of coffee beans became a familiar sound in roasting facilities across America. During the 1870s and 1880s, further innovations emerged in both Europe and America. The development of spherical roasters allowed for more even heat distribution, while improved ventilation systems helped control temperature with greater precision. These machines could roast hundreds of pounds of coffee per hour, filling warehouses with the rich, comforting scent of roasting beans. German inventor Karl Luther introduced water-quenching systems in 1889, allowing roasters to rapidly cool beans at exactly the right moment. This precise control over the roasting process helped ensure consistency in larger batches. Meanwhile, the gentle hiss of steam and cooling beans became another layer in the symphony of sounds in commercial roasteries. These mechanical innovations transformed coffee roasting from an artisanal craft into a precise, scientific process. Yet even as operations scaled up, skilled roasters remained essential, using their experienced senses to monitor the subtle changes in color, aroma, and sound that indicated the perfect roast. The marriage of traditional expertise with mechanical innovation would continue to shape coffee production well into the 20th century. As mechanical roasting innovations transformed coffee production in the early 1900s, another revolutionary development was quietly taking shape: the advent of vacuum packaging. In the gentle warmth of coffee warehouses and processing facilities, researchers and engineers were discovering how the subtle enemy of freshness, oxygen, could be kept at bay through innovative storage solutions. The story of vacuum packaging begins in 1900, when Hills Brothers Coffee of San Francisco first experimented with removing air from their coffee tins. Like watching the morning mist slowly dissipate over coffee fields, they observed how coffee's aromatic compounds would gradually fade when exposed to oxygen. Through patient trial and error, they developed a process they called vacuum packing, which would transform how coffee was preserved and shipped around the world. By 1910, the soft whoosh of air being extracted from metal containers had become a familiar sound in coffee packaging facilities. The process involved carefully removing oxygen and sealing the containers, creating an environment where the delicate coffee oils and flavors could remain stable for months rather than weeks. This gentle preservation method allowed the subtle notes of caramel, fruit, and chocolate within the roasted beans to remain intact far longer than ever before. The innovation spread slowly but steadily through the industry, like the careful pouring of water over coffee grounds. Major companies like Maxwell House and 8 O'Clock Coffee adopted vacuum packaging in the 1920s, leading to more consistent quality in homes across America. The familiar sound of breaking the vacuum seal, that soft hiss of air rushing in, became associated with coffee's morning ritual, a small but significant moment in countless households. This development marked a quiet revolution in how people experienced coffee, preserving the complex flavors that had previously been lost to time and oxidation. The rich aromas and subtle tastes that had once been fleeting could now be captured and shared across greater distances and longer periods, fundamentally changing coffee's journey from roaster to cup. As the early 1900s dawned, the landscape of coffee consumption began to shift dramatically, with the emergence of commercial coffee brands that would become household names. In the gentle quiet of roasting facilities across America, familiar aromas wafted through the air as companies like Maxwell House, founded in Nashville in 1892, began establishing their presence in homes across the nation. The soft whisper of progress could be heard as Hill's Brothers, operating out of San Francisco, pioneered the use of vacuum-packed cans in 1900, forever changing how coffee would be preserved and distributed. In these transformative years, the soothing rhythm of coffee production took on a new cadence as Folgers, which had grown from a small San Francisco operation in the 1850s, gradually expanded its reach across the American West. The comforting aroma of their signature blend became a morning ritual in countless households, while the steady hum of their roasting operations grew ever larger. Perhaps most notably, in 1938, Nestlé developed a new process for making instant coffee, creating Nescafé in response to a request from the Brazilian government to help preserve their coffee surplus. The gentle bubbling of their spray drying process would transform coffee consumption patterns worldwide, making the beloved beverage more accessible than ever before. Throughout these decades, the warm glow of advertising campaigns illuminated billboards and magazine pages, as these brands crafted their identities through memorable slogans and imagery. Maxwell House's "Good to the Last Drop," purportedly praised by President Theodore Roosevelt himself, became deeply woven into the cultural fabric of American life. The soft rustle of newspaper pages carried these messages into homes across the country, while radio advertisements added their melodic voices to the growing chorus of coffee brand recognition. In this era of commercial expansion, the quiet efficiency of mass production merged with the artful craft of marketing, creating a new chapter in coffee's rich history. These pioneering brands would go on to shape coffee consumption patterns for generations to come, their influence extending far beyond their humble beginnings into the very essence of modern coffee culture. As coffee became deeply woven into the fabric of industrial society, it played an increasingly vital role in worker culture during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In factories and offices across the industrialized world, the gentle aroma of coffee became synonymous with the daily rhythm of work life, providing both sustenance and social connection for laborers facing long hours and demanding conditions. The tradition of the coffee break emerged gradually, beginning in the textile mills of New England, where workers would pause briefly to sip hot coffee and find momentary respite from their tasks. By the 1880s, many factories had begun providing coffee to their workers, recognizing how the warm beverage helped maintain alertness and productivity throughout the long workday. The soft whistle of coffee urns became a familiar sound in factory break rooms and office corridors. In the early 1900s, labor unions began advocating for formal coffee breaks, understanding the importance of these quiet moments of respite. The practice became increasingly standardized, with companies like Barkalow Manufacturing Company of Buffalo, New York, being among the first to officially institute the coffee break in 1902. Workers would gather around simple tables, steam rising from their cups, sharing quiet conversations and brief moments of community. Coffee wagons and carts began appearing on city streets, serving steaming cups to construction workers and laborers during their brief respites. These mobile vendors created a gentle bustle of activity during break times, their familiar bells and calls becoming part of the urban soundtrack. In office buildings, the ritual of brewing coffee became a shared responsibility, with workers taking turns maintaining the communal percolator that sat warming on a corner desk. By the 1940s, the coffee break had become so ingrained in American worker culture that it was officially written into many labor contracts, ensuring these peaceful moments of pause would remain a permanent part of the workday routine. The simple act of sharing coffee helped forge bonds between coworkers and provided a subtle rhythm to the industrial workday that continues to resonate in modern workplace culture. As America grew and changed through the late 1800s and early 1900s, coffee culture evolved alongside it, weaving itself deeply into the fabric of daily life. In cities across the nation, coffee houses began emerging as gathering places where people could escape the quickening pace of industrial life. These establishments, often featuring ornate Victorian decor and polished wooden counters, served as spaces where both working people and society's elite could find comfort in a steaming cup. The development of American coffee culture was particularly shaped by waves of European immigration, bringing with them their own coffee traditions and preparations. Italian immigrants introduced espresso to cities like New York and San Francisco, while German immigrants established elaborate coffee gardens where families could spend leisurely Sunday afternoons enjoying coffee and pastries beneath shaded arbors. During the 1920s, despite prohibition's focus on alcohol, coffee consumption flourished. Small diners and coffee shops became increasingly popular, offering affordable cups of coffee alongside simple meals. The iconic American coffee shop emerged during this period, with its bottomless cups of coffee becoming a cherished tradition that would endure for decades. The Great Depression saw coffee become even more important as an affordable luxury. Many people would nurse a 5-cent cup of coffee for hours in warm diners, finding both physical and emotional comfort. By the 1940s, coffee had become so integrated into American life that during World War II, it was considered essential for troop morale, with the military carefully managing coffee bean supplies to ensure soldiers had their daily cups. The post-war prosperity of the 1950s brought new innovations in coffee culture. Electric percolators became standard in American homes, while instant coffee provided convenience for busy suburban households. Coffee breaks became institutionalized in workplaces, and the ritual of morning coffee became deeply embedded in the American routine, creating patterns of consumption that would influence coffee culture for generations to come. During the American Civil War, coffee took on new significance as both a military necessity and a symbol of unity and division. In the early 1860s, Union soldiers received a generous coffee ration of 30 pounds per year, while their Confederate counterparts often struggled to obtain any coffee at all due to the Union naval blockade. The gentle aroma of coffee brewing over campfires became a cherished comfort for soldiers on both sides, offering a moment of warmth and familiar ritual amid the hardships of war. Union soldiers developed creative ways to prepare their precious coffee rations, carrying individual tin cups and fashioning crude grinders from their rifle butts. They would carefully roast green coffee beans in their frying pans over evening fires, the rich scent wafting through the camp as they shared stories of home. The daily coffee ritual became so important that some soldiers would wake before dawn to ensure they had their morning brew before marching. Meanwhile, in the Confederate States, the scarcity of coffee led to innovative substitutes. People experimented with roasting chicory root, sweet potatoes, and even acorns to create coffee-like beverages. These alternatives, though not quite the same, provided a sense of normalcy during difficult times. Wealthy Southern families would sometimes pay extraordinary prices for smuggled coffee beans, treating them as precious luxuries to be carefully rationed. The war years permanently changed American coffee consumption patterns. When soldiers returned home, they brought with them an acquired taste for coffee and specific preparation methods learned during their service. This helped establish coffee as a truly national beverage, transcending regional preferences. The post-war period saw a boom in coffee houses and imports, while innovations in packaging and preservation, initially developed for military use, found their way into civilian life. These wartime experiences laid the groundwork for coffee's central role in American social and cultural life for generations to come. As the American coffee industry matured in the late 1800s, several pioneering companies emerged that would shape the nation's coffee culture for generations to come. In 1850, James Folger, who had traveled to San Francisco during the Gold Rush, founded what would become Folger's Coffee Company, bringing the rich aroma of fresh roasted coffee to the American West. The gentle sound of coffee beans being roasted became a familiar comfort in the growing city. Around the same time, in Pittsburgh, brothers John and Charles Arbuckle developed a unique glazing process that helped coffee beans stay fresh longer during shipping. Their pre-roasted, packaged coffee, sold under the name Ariosa, became known as the coffee that won the West, as settlers and cowboys carried their distinctive packages across the frontier. The warm, inviting scent of Arbuckle's coffee brewing over campfires became a cherished part of Western life. In 1873, Maxwell House Coffee began its story in Nashville, Tennessee, where the Maxwell House Hotel served a smooth, distinctive blend that President Theodore Roosevelt would later declare was good to the last drop. The hotel's elegant dining room filled with the rich, comforting aroma of their special blend, which would soon be enjoyed in homes across America. Perhaps most significantly, in 1892, Joel Cheek created a perfect blend for the Maxwell House Hotel, leading to the creation of the Maxwell House brand. Meanwhile, in Austin, Minnesota, August C. Cressing and his son, R.W., established what would become Hill's Brothers Coffee, introducing vacuum-packed cans that preserved coffee's fresh taste and aroma far longer than traditional packaging. The soft hiss of their innovative sealed cans being opened became a familiar sound in American kitchens, marking the beginning of a new era in coffee preservation and distribution. In the gentle morning light of American households during the mid-20th century, two coffee brands became as familiar as sunrise itself, Maxwell House and Folgers. These companies didn't just sell coffee. They helped shape the very essence of how Americans experienced their daily brew. Maxwell House, which began in Nashville's Maxwell House Hotel in 1892, gained legendary status when President Theodore Roosevelt supposedly declared their coffee good to the last drop in 1907. This simple phrase, spoken at the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville, became one of advertising's most enduring slogans, floating through decades of American breakfast times like the aromatic steam from a fresh cup of coffee. Meanwhile, James Folger's company, established in San Francisco during the Gold Rush era, was steadily building its own empire. By the 1950s, both Maxwell House and Folgers had perfected the art of mass-producing ground coffee that offered consistency and convenience to millions of homes across the nation. Their familiar red and blue cans became staples in kitchen cupboards from coast to coast. During this era, the soft bubbling of percolators became the soundtrack of American mornings. The company's vacuum-sealed packaging technology helped preserve coffee's freshness, while their automated roasting processes ensured uniform taste. The comforting ritual of measuring spoonfuls of ground coffee into filter baskets became deeply ingrained in daily routines. These brands didn't just sell coffee, they sold a promise of comfort and reliability. Their widespread television advertising campaigns in the 1950s and 1960s featured warm domestic scenes, families gathering around breakfast tables, neighbors sharing afternoon coffee, and the gentle steam rising from ceramic mugs. This era marked a time when coffee became less about its origins or brewing methods, and more about its role as a reliable companion to everyday American life. In the early decades of the 20th century, as people's lives grew increasingly busy, the desire for a more convenient way to prepare coffee led to one of the beverage's most significant innovations. The story of instant coffee begins with Satoru Kato, a Japanese scientist working in Chicago, who developed a stable, soluble coffee powder in 1901. However, it was George Constant Louis Washington, living in Guatemala, who first successfully mass-produced instant coffee in 1906, marketing it as Red E-Coffee. The gentle aroma of these early instant coffees may not have matched fresh-brewed varieties, but they offered unprecedented convenience. During World War I, instant coffee became an essential provision for soldiers in the trenches, where the comforting warmth of a quick cup provided solace amid difficult conditions. The military's entire supply of G. Washington's instant coffee was requisitioned, with soldiers affectionately calling it a cup of George. In 1938, Nestlé would revolutionize the instant coffee market with the introduction of Nescafé. Their breakthrough came when Brazil approached them to help preserve their coffee surplus. Using a new process that preserved more of coffee's natural flavor, Nestlé's food scientist Max Morgenthaler developed a method of spray-drying coffee extract that would define instant coffee for generations. The post-World War II era saw instant coffee reach new heights of popularity, as busy suburban households embraced its convenience. The soft whisper of granules falling into cups and the quiet stirring of spoons became part of morning routines across America and beyond. Companies continued to refine their processes, introducing freeze-dried varieties in the 1960s, which offered improved flavor while maintaining the simplicity that had made instant coffee so appealing. Meanwhile, in office break rooms and home kitchens, instant coffee created new social rituals, allowing people to share quick coffee moments without the ceremony of traditional brewing. Though its popularity would eventually decline among coffee connoisseurs, instant coffee's innovation marked a significant chapter in coffee's ongoing story. In the decades following World War II, the coffee industry underwent dramatic transformations that would shape how people consumed and thought about coffee for generations to come. The 1950s saw the continued dominance of large American coffee companies, with their vacuum-sealed tins of pre-ground coffee becoming a staple in households across the nation. The gentle morning ritual of measuring out spoonfuls of Maxwell House or Folgers became as routine as reading the newspaper. During this period, coffee consumption reached its peak in America, with the average person drinking 3 cups per day by 1962. Coffee breaks became institutionalized in workplaces, and percolators bubbled contentedly in homes and offices alike. The soft hum of coffee machines and the familiar aroma of brewing coffee became deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. The 1960s and 1970s brought significant changes to the global coffee trade. The International Coffee Agreement of 1962 established a quota system to stabilize prices, while coffee-producing nations formed organizations to protect their interests. Brazil, despite occasional frost damage to its crops, maintained its position as the world's leading producer, its vast coffee plantations stretching across the landscape like green oceans. Marketing strategies evolved during this time, with companies developing memorable campaigns like Juan Valdez, the fictional Colombian coffee grower who personified quality coffee. The warm, inviting imagery of these advertisements helped create emotional connections between consumers and their preferred brands. Meanwhile, innovations in packaging and preservation techniques allowed coffee to stay fresh longer, though some coffee enthusiasts began to question whether convenience was coming at the cost of flavor. By the 1980s, the first stirrings of what would become the specialty coffee movement were beginning to emerge, as consumers gradually became more interested in coffee's origins and quality. Small roasters started appearing in cities, offering alternatives to the standardized tastes of mass-produced coffee, quietly setting the stage for the significant changes that would follow in the coming decades. As the global coffee industry expanded throughout the 20th century, the need for international cooperation and price stabilization became increasingly apparent. In 1962, a watershed moment occurred with the establishment of the International Coffee Agreement, or ICA, which would shape the coffee trade for decades to come. This agreement brought together both coffee-producing and coffee-consuming nations in an attempt to create stability in what had historically been a volatile market. The gentle ebb and flow of coffee prices had long affected millions of lives across the continents, from the misty highlands of Colombia to the sun-drenched plantations of Kenya. Under the ICA's careful guidance, a quota system emerged, setting export limits for producing countries and establishing target price ranges that would protect both farmers and consumers. Like a well-tended garden, the agreement helped nurture a more predictable and sustainable coffee economy. Throughout the 1970s and early 1980s, the ICA provided a comforting framework of stability. Coffee farmers could plan their harvests with greater confidence, knowing that prices would remain within certain boundaries. The familiar rhythm of the seasonal coffee trade continued under this protective umbrella, with the soft rustling of coffee cherries being picked and sorted echoing across hillsides around the world. However, like leaves slowly changing color with the seasons, the effectiveness of the ICA began to fade. By 1989, shifting political winds and growing market pressures led to the agreement's collapse. The careful balance that had been maintained for nearly 3 decades gave way to a new era of free market forces. This transition would bring both challenges and opportunities, as coffee prices began to follow their own natural course, like a river finding its way through new terrain. The legacy of these global coffee agreements continues to influence discussions about fair trade and sustainable pricing, reminding us of the delicate interconnections between those who grow our coffee and those who enjoy its warming presence in their daily lives. As the global coffee industry evolved through the 1970s and 1980s, a significant transformation was quietly brewing in the way people consumed their daily coffee. The rise of corporate coffee chains would forever change the coffee landscape, beginning with a small coffee shop in Seattle's Pike Place market. In 1971, three partners, Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Boker, opened the first Starbucks, initially selling only whole bean coffee and equipment, inspired by the coffee roasting expertise of Alfred Peet. The gentle aroma of freshly roasted beans wafted through their store, drawing curious customers who were beginning to develop more sophisticated coffee preferences. Throughout the early 1980s, the company remained relatively small until Howard Schultz joined as director of marketing in 1982. After a transformative trip to Milan, where he experienced the warmth and community of Italian espresso bars, Schultz envisioned bringing this cafe culture to America. In 1987, the original owners sold Starbucks to Schultz, who began expanding the concept across the nation. The comfortable armchairs, soft lighting, and carefully curated atmosphere created what became known as the third place, a welcoming space between home and work where people could gather and linger over their beverages. Other chains followed this model, each adding their own variations to the formula. Gloria Jeans, founded in 1979, brought specialty coffee to shopping malls across America. The coffee bean and tea leaf, established in 1963, expanded significantly during this period, offering their own unique takes on premium beverages. Canadian chain Tim Hortons, which began in 1964, merged coffee culture with casual dining, becoming deeply woven into Canadian identity. These corporate chains standardized the coffee experience, introducing mainstream America to drinks like cappuccinos, lattes, and cafe mochas. The familiar green and white Starbucks logo became a global symbol as the company expanded internationally throughout the 1990s, bringing American coffee culture full circle from its humble beginnings in ancient Ethiopia. As coffee consumption grew globally throughout the 20th century, the need for consistent quality and efficient production became increasingly important. During the 1960s and 1970s, major coffee companies began implementing standardized procedures across their operations, from bean selection to roasting processes. These developments marked a significant shift from the varied, often inconsistent methods that had characterized coffee production in earlier decades. Large-scale roasting facilities emerged, equipped with automated systems that could precisely control temperature and timing. The gentle whir of industrial roasting drums became a constant backdrop in these facilities, where master roasters carefully monitored the process through small viewing windows, watching as the beans transformed from pale green to rich brown. Companies like Probat and Burns developed increasingly sophisticated roasting equipment that could process tons of coffee each day while maintaining remarkable consistency. Quality control laboratories became standard features in coffee processing facilities, where trained professionals would carefully evaluate samples using standardized cupping protocols. The soft clink of ceramic cups and the quiet murmurs of tasters noting their observations became familiar sounds in these pristine testing rooms. The Specialty Coffee Association began developing formal guidelines for coffee evaluation, establishing a common language and scoring system that would eventually become the industry standard. In the fields, agricultural practices also became more standardized, with coffee farmers receiving training in optimal harvesting techniques and post-harvest processing methods. The gentle rustle of coffee cherries being sorted by hand gave way to the steady hum of mechanical sorting equipment in many larger operations. Traditional sun-drying patios were increasingly supplemented with mechanical dryers that could process coffee more quickly and consistently, regardless of weather conditions. This era of standardization brought both benefits and challenges to the coffee industry. While it ensured more consistent quality and increased efficiency, some worried that the emphasis on uniformity might compromise the unique characteristics that made different coffee origins special. These concerns would later influence the development of alternative approaches in the specialty coffee movement. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the coffee industry faced one of its most challenging periods, known as the coffee crisis. As the gentle morning mists rose over coffee farms across Latin America, Africa, and Asia, farmers awakened to find themselves in increasingly difficult circumstances. Coffee prices had plummeted to their lowest levels in a century, falling below 50 cents per pound in 2001, far below the cost of production. The crisis emerged quietly at first, like shadows lengthening across mountain slopes. The collapse of the International Coffee Agreement's quota system in 1989 had gradually led to overproduction, while large coffee companies continued to purchase beans at ever lower prices. Small farmers, whose families had tenderly cultivated coffee plants for generations, found themselves unable to cover even basic expenses. During this challenging time, a movement began to take shape, as gentle as the first spring rains but growing steadily in strength. Fair trade certification, which had its roots in the 1940s, began gaining significant momentum. Organizations like Transfair USA, founded in 1999, worked to establish standards ensuring farmers received better prices for their crops and improved working conditions. The concept was beautifully simple: Consumers would pay a premium for coffee, knowing that farmers would receive a guaranteed minimum price, initially set at $1.26 per pound. This safety net helped protect farming communities from market volatility, like a sturdy umbrella sheltering tender coffee seedlings from harsh weather. The movement spread slowly but steadily, like the careful nurturing of a coffee plant. Companies like Equal Exchange pioneered the integration of fair trade coffee into mainstream markets, while conscious consumers began asking questions about the origin of their daily brew. This growing awareness would eventually lead to broader changes in how coffee was valued and traded, setting the stage for the emergence of direct trade relationships and the third wave coffee movement. As the 1960s dawned, coffee had become deeply woven into the fabric of daily American life, marking what would later be called the first wave of coffee culture. During this era, the gentle aroma of percolating coffee became a familiar morning comfort in homes across the nation, while the soft gurgle of commercial brewers provided a constant backdrop in diners and offices everywhere. Major brands like Folgers and Maxwell House dominated the landscape, their familiar red and blue containers becoming fixtures in nearly every kitchen cabinet. These companies focused on consistency and convenience, perfecting the art of vacuum-sealed packaging that kept their pre-ground coffee fresh for longer periods. The iconic glass jar with its memorable pop upon opening became a sound that millions associated with their morning ritual. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, innovations in freeze-drying technology allowed for the development of instant coffee that could be prepared with just hot water. While coffee connoisseurs might have found it lacking, instant coffee's simplicity and affordability helped spread coffee consumption to new markets and situations, from camping trips to office break rooms. The period was characterized by a focus on mass production and standardization. Coffee became less about its origins or brewing methods and more about reliability and accessibility. The soft whir of electric grinders in supermarkets became a familiar sound as customers ground their weekly supply of beans, though most chose the convenience of pre-ground coffee. Marketing during this era emphasized coffee's role in American family life, with gentle television advertisements showing couples sharing quiet moments over steaming cups, or families gathering for breakfast around tables where coffee was always present. The first wave established coffee as an essential part of the American lifestyle, setting the stage for the more nuanced appreciation that would follow in later decades. As coffee became deeply woven into the fabric of daily life across the globe, large corporations emerged to dominate the industry throughout the 1970s and 1980s. The gentle aroma of mass-produced coffee became a familiar comfort in homes and offices everywhere, as companies like Folgers, Maxwell House, and Nescafé refined their production methods to create consistently uniform products that would taste the same cup after cup. In this era of mass market dominance, the soft whir of electric coffee makers and the quiet rustle of vacuum-sealed packages became the soundtrack of morning routines worldwide. These large companies developed sophisticated distribution networks that brought their branded coffee products to every corner store and supermarket shelf, making coffee more accessible than ever before. The warm, inviting scent of coffee brewing became so commonplace that it was almost taken for granted. The period saw the rise of instant coffee technology, with brands like Nescafé perfecting their freeze-dried crystals to dissolve smoothly in hot water. Marketing campaigns emphasized convenience and reliability, showing peaceful domestic scenes of families enjoying their morning coffee together. The steady growth of these coffee giants meant they could maintain vast warehouses of beans, ensuring consistent supply and stable pricing for consumers. Regional roasting facilities operated around the clock, their machines humming softly as they processed enormous quantities of beans to meet growing demand. The air in these facilities was perpetually filled with the rich, toasted scent of roasting coffee. While this standardization meant some loss of variety and unique characteristics in coffee, It provided millions of people with dependable access to their daily cup of comfort. This mass-market era created enduring coffee drinking habits and expectations that would later influence both consumer preferences and the eventual rise of specialty coffee culture. The familiar brands became household names, their products forming a comfortable backdrop to countless quiet moments and conversations shared over steaming cups of coffee. In the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, instant coffee reached its zenith of popularity, becoming a symbol of modern convenience in an increasingly fast-paced world. The gentle hum of electric kettles and the soft clink of spoons against mugs became the morning soundtrack in homes across America and Europe, as instant coffee captured up to one-third of all coffee consumed in many Western nations. Nestlé's Nescafé led this revolution, their distinctive glass jars with golden lids becoming a familiar sight in countless kitchen cupboards. The company had perfected their spray drying and freeze drying processes, creating granules that dissolved almost instantly in hot water, releasing that familiar coffee aroma that so many had come to associate with their daily routine. Maxwell House and Folgers followed suit, their own instant brands filling supermarket shelves with promises of speed and consistency. In offices and homes, the ritual of measuring spoonfuls of brown crystals into cups became as natural as breathing. The soft whoosh of hot water meeting instant granules replaced the burble of percolators in many households. The space age had arrived, and instant coffee fit perfectly into this era of convenience and technological advancement. Advertising campaigns painted pictures of busy professionals and homemakers saving precious minutes each morning, while still enjoying their essential cup of coffee. The subtle vanilla and caramel notes that food scientists had carefully engineered into instant coffee helped mask some of its harsher elements, making it more palatable to a mass audience. This peak would gradually begin to wane as the 1980s approached, with coffee drinkers slowly developing more sophisticated palates and yearning for something beyond mere convenience. But for this moment in coffee history, the simple act of adding hot water to coffee crystals represented the height of modern living, a small daily miracle that millions came to rely upon. As coffee became increasingly central to daily life, the evolution of its marketing and branding reflected deeper cultural shifts and changing consumer preferences. In the gentle morning light of the 1950s and 60s, familiar coffee brands began crafting their identities through warm, comforting imagery of family breakfast tables and aromatic kitchen scenes. Maxwell House's "Good to the Last Drop" slogan, first coined in 1915, became deeply woven into the American consciousness, while the soothing sound of percolating coffee accompanied countless television advertisements. The soft, reassuring voice of Mrs. Olson, Folger's beloved Swedish spokesperson from 1965 to 1986, invited viewers to share in the simple pleasure of mountain-grown coffee, her gentle accent and maternal presence creating a sense of trust and tradition. Coffee marketing gradually shifted from purely functional benefits to emotional connections, with brands like 8 O'Clock Coffee emphasizing their heritage dating back to 1859, telling stories of careful bean selection and time-honored roasting methods. In the quieter moments of the 1970s and 80s, coffee advertising began incorporating more sophisticated elements, reflecting growing consumer awareness of coffee origins and quality. The rich imagery of Colombian coffee fields and Juan Valdez, created in 1958 by the National Federation of Coffee Growers of Colombia, brought the exotic world of coffee cultivation into everyday homes. The character's authentic portrayal, complete with his mule Conchita and traditional garb, helped establish Colombian coffee's premium reputation. As we drifted into the 1990s, coffee marketing became increasingly focused on lifestyle and personal identity. Brands began sharing stories of sustainable farming practices, artisanal craftsmanship, and direct trade relationships. The soft whisper of steam rising from a carefully crafted cup became as important as the coffee itself, as marketing evolved to embrace the ritual and culture surrounding coffee consumption. As coffee became deeply woven into the fabric of daily life across cultures, consumer habits and preferences underwent fascinating transformations throughout the decades. In the 1950s and 1960s, the ritual of morning coffee became firmly established in households worldwide, with many people contentedly drinking whatever brand was most readily available at their local grocery store. The percolator bubbled away in countless kitchens, filling homes with that familiar aroma that signaled the start of each new day. By the 1970s, consumers began showing increased interest in different varieties and brewing methods. The Mr. Coffee automatic drip machine, introduced in 1972, revolutionized home brewing, offering a gentler extraction method that many felt produced a smoother cup. People started paying more attention to the origin of their beans, though this awareness was still in its early stages. The 1980s saw the emergence of flavored coffees, with vanilla, hazelnut, and other aromatics appealing to those seeking variety beyond traditional roasts. Coffee shops began offering an expanding menu of options, responding to consumers who wanted more choices in their daily coffee experience. The ritual of meeting friends for coffee became increasingly popular, transforming coffee drinking from a solitary morning routine into a social activity. During the 1990s, consumers became more sophisticated in their coffee knowledge and preferences. Terms like French roast, Colombian, and Arabica entered everyday vocabulary. People began investing in home grinding equipment, seeking the fresh ground experience they enjoyed in cafes. The growing appreciation for quality and variety laid the groundwork for what would later become the specialty coffee movement, as consumers increasingly viewed coffee not just as a caffeine delivery system, but as a beverage worthy of connoisseurship, much like wine. As the 1980s dawned, a remarkable transformation began to reshape coffee culture across the globe. This period, known as the second wave of coffee, brought with it a new appreciation for specialty coffee and transformed how people thought about their daily brew. The gentle aroma of freshly roasted beans began wafting through urban neighborhoods as small cafes and coffee shops appeared on countless street corners. Starbucks, which had started as a humble coffee bean store in Seattle's Pike Place Market in 1971, emerged as the defining force of this era. Under Howard Schultz's leadership beginning in 1987, the company introduced Americans to Italian coffee culture, with terms like latte, cappuccino, and espresso becoming part of everyday vocabulary. The comfortable atmosphere of these cafes, with their warm lighting and cozy seating, created what Schultz called the third place, a relaxing space between home and work. During this period, coffee drinkers began paying closer attention to the origin of their beans, the roasting process, and brewing methods. The soft whir of espresso machines and the gentle tapping of tampers became familiar sounds in cafes across the country. Baristas emerged as skilled professionals, carefully crafting drinks with artistic patterns swirled into milk foam. Regional coffee chains like Peet's Coffee and Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf expanded their presence, while independent cafes flourished in urban centers. The focus shifted from simple cups of coffee to customized beverages, with consumers learning to appreciate different roast levels and flavor profiles. This era saw the introduction of coffee certification programs, including Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance, reflecting growing awareness of social and environmental concerns in coffee production. The second wave created a foundation of coffee appreciation that would later enable even more sophisticated approaches to coffee cultivation, preparation, and consumption. The quiet revolution of this period transformed coffee from a simple morning necessity into an artisanal beverage worthy of careful consideration and enjoyment. In the tranquil evolution of coffee culture, few phenomena have shaped our modern coffee landscape quite like the gentle rise of Starbucks. Beginning in 1971, at Seattle's historic Pike Place Market, what started as a humble coffee bean retailer would slowly transform into a global coffee empire that fundamentally changed how people worldwide experience and think about coffee. The original founders, Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Boker, were inspired by Alfred Pete's commitment to quality coffee and initially focused on selling premium coffee beans. In 1987, Howard Schultz acquired Starbucks and began implementing his vision of bringing Italian coffee culture to America. Having been moved by the warm, communal atmosphere of Milan's espresso bars, Schultz imagined creating what he called a third place, a comfortable space between home and work where people could gather and connect. Throughout the 1990s, Starbucks expanded with remarkable consistency, opening new stores with a soothing predictability that brought familiar comfort to countless neighborhoods. The company introduced Americans to Italian coffee terminology, making words like latte, cappuccino, and macchiato part of everyday vocabulary. Their stores featured warm lighting, comfortable seating, and the ever-present aroma of freshly ground coffee beans. The standardization of the coffee experience, while criticized by some, provided a reliable foundation that helped millions of people develop more sophisticated coffee preferences. Starbucks' carefully crafted atmosphere, with its earth-toned colors, soft jazz music, and friendly baristas, created a template for modern coffee shop culture that would influence countless independent cafes. By the early 2000s, Starbucks had become deeply woven into the fabric of daily life in cities across the globe, their green mermaid logo a familiar beacon of comfort and consistency. Their success demonstrated how coffee could be more than just a beverage. It could be an experience, a lifestyle, and a daily ritual that brought people together in shared spaces of warmth and connection. As coffee culture evolved beyond the mass-market approach of the second wave, a new movement began to emerge in the late 1990s and early 2000s: specialty coffee. This thoughtful approach to coffee emphasized the intricate qualities of single-origin beans, artisanal roasting methods, and precise brewing techniques. Like wine connoisseurs discussing terroir and vintage, coffee enthusiasts began exploring the nuanced flavors that could emerge from carefully sourced and prepared beans. The specialty coffee movement was marked by several key developments. In 1982, the Specialty Coffee Association of America was founded, establishing standards for premium coffee quality. Small, independent roasters began carefully selecting green coffee beans, developing direct relationships with farmers, and experimenting with lighter roasting profiles that highlighted each bean's unique characteristics. The gentle aromas of carefully roasted single-origin coffees began wafting through neighborhood cafes, offering alternatives to darker commercial roasts. Coffee professionals started paying closer attention to factors like altitude, soil composition, and processing methods at origin. Terms like cupping notes, flavor profiles, and microlots entered the coffee lexicon. Baristas became skilled craftspeople, studying the science of extraction and perfecting their techniques for everything from espresso to pour-over brewing. The soft hiss of steam wands and the rhythmic drip of filter coffee became familiar sounds in specialty cafes. This movement also brought increased awareness of sustainability and ethical sourcing. Direct trade relationships flourished, with roasters visiting farms and developing personal connections with producers. Coffee drinkers learned about processing methods like natural, washed, and honey process, each imparting distinct flavor characteristics to the final cup. The quiet revolution of specialty coffee was transforming how people thought about, prepared, and appreciated their daily brew, setting the stage for what would become known as coffee's third wave. The Italian influence on coffee culture and drinks has been profound and long-lasting, shaping how much of the world experiences coffee today. In the early 1900s, Italy developed its own distinctive coffee culture, centered around the espresso machine and the social ritual of standing at a bar to enjoy a quickly prepared, concentrated shot of coffee. The invention of the espresso machine by Luigi Bezzera in 1901 brought a new dimension to coffee preparation, creating a rich, concentrated brew topped with a golden crema. The gentle hiss of steam and the warm aroma of freshly ground beans became signature sounds and scents in Italian cafes, where baristas in crisp white shirts would skillfully operate their gleaming machines. The word espresso itself refers not just to the preparation method, but to the speed and personalized nature of the service, a coffee expressly made for each customer at the moment of ordering. From this foundation came the development of beloved drinks that would spread globally. The cappuccino, named for its resemblance to the brown robes and white hoods of Capuchin monks, the latte, with its soothing layers of espresso and steamed milk, and the macchiato, meaning stained or marked with just a touch of milk. Each drink followed precise traditions and customs: cappuccino only in the morning, espresso as a quick afternoon pick-me-up. Italian coffee bars became social institutions, where people would gather throughout the day, exchanging news and conversation while standing at marble counters. This culture gradually spread beyond Italy's borders, influencing coffee preparation and consumption worldwide. The Italian emphasis on quality, technique, and the social aspects of coffee drinking would later become fundamental to the development of specialty coffee culture, though often adapted and reinterpreted in different cultural contexts. As we entered the late 1990s and early 2000s, a remarkable renaissance in café culture began to unfold across the globe. This revival drew inspiration from both the traditional European coffeehouses and modern specialty coffee movements, creating spaces that would become the living rooms of cities and towns worldwide. The gentle hum of conversation and the soft whir of espresso machines became the soundtrack to this cultural transformation. In cities like Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco, independent cafes emerged as community gathering places, where the warm aroma of freshly ground beans mingled with the creative energy of artists, writers, and entrepreneurs. These spaces featured exposed brick walls, worn wooden tables, and carefully curated music playlists, creating an atmosphere that invited both focused work and leisurely conversation. The café culture renaissance brought with it new rituals and social customs. Patrons would linger for hours over their carefully crafted beverages, transforming the quick coffee break into an extended social experience. Wi-Fi became as essential as good coffee, as cafes evolved into informal workspaces for the growing digital nomad community. The soft tapping of laptop keys joined the familiar sounds of steam wands and ceramic cups touching saucers. This period saw the emergence of the third place concept spaces that served as alternatives to home and work, where people could feel both comfortable and connected. Baristas became cultural curators, not just coffee preparers, sharing their knowledge of brewing methods and bean origins with increasingly curious customers. The lighting was often warm and subdued, creating intimate atmospheres that encouraged both productivity and relaxation. In neighborhoods across the world, from Melbourne's laneways to London's Shoreditch, café culture helped revitalize urban areas, turning forgotten spaces into vibrant community hubs. The gentle transformation continued as these establishments became integral parts of daily life, offering refuge, inspiration, and connection over perfectly prepared cups of coffee. As coffee culture evolved through the 1990s and into the new millennium, a growing awareness emerged about the social and environmental impacts of coffee production. The fair trade movement, which had its roots in the 1980s, began gaining significant momentum, bringing attention to the often challenging conditions faced by coffee farmers around the world. Like gentle rain nourishing coffee plants, this awareness slowly permeated through the industry, changing how people thought about their daily brew. In 1997, Fairtrade International established its certification system, creating clear standards for coffee producers and traders. This system ensured farmers received a minimum price for their beans, providing a safety net when market prices dropped too low. The movement spread like morning mist across valleys, touching communities from the highlands of Guatemala to the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro. Alongside fair trade practices, sustainability became increasingly important. Coffee farmers began adopting shade-grown cultivation methods, allowing their plants to flourish beneath the natural canopy of forest trees. This traditional approach protected biodiversity, created better growing conditions, and produced beans with more complex flavors. The soft rustling of leaves above the coffee plants became a symbol of environmental stewardship. Organizations like the Rainforest Alliance and bird-friendly certification programs emerged, encouraging practices that protected both ecosystems and communities. Coffee roasters, large and small, began highlighting their commitment to sustainable sourcing, while consumers learned to look for certification labels that assured them of ethical production methods. By the early 2000s, direct trade relationships between roasters and farmers became more common, fostering personal connections that stretched across continents. These relationships, like carefully tended coffee plants, grew stronger over time, leading to better quality beans and more sustainable livelihoods for farming communities. The quiet revolution of conscious coffee consumption continued to shape the industry, creating ripples that would influence future generations of coffee lovers and producers alike. As our awareness of environmental challenges has grown, the coffee industry has had to confront its considerable ecological impact. The gentle morning ritual that brings comfort to millions has, over decades, left lasting marks on our planet's delicate ecosystems. In traditional shade-grown coffee cultivation, coffee plants nestled beneath the forest canopy, creating a harmonious relationship with native flora and fauna. However, as demand increased throughout the 20th century, many farmers shifted to sun-grown coffee plantations, clearing vast stretches of rainforest to maximize yields. The environmental consequences became increasingly apparent by the 1990s, with documented losses of bird habitat, soil degradation, and reduced biodiversity in major coffee-growing regions. The serene mountains of Colombia, the misty highlands of Ethiopia, and the verdant slopes of Costa Rica all witnessed this transformation. Water usage emerged as another critical concern, as traditional wet processing methods required significant amounts of clean water, often straining local resources in rural communities. In response, forward-thinking farmers and environmentally conscious roasters began developing more sustainable practices. Some returned to traditional shade-grown methods, while others experimented with water-conserving processing techniques. Organizations like the Rainforest Alliance and bird-friendly certification programs emerged, encouraging practices that protected local ecosystems while supporting coffee production. Climate change has added another layer of complexity to coffee's environmental story. The delicate Arabica coffee plant requires specific altitude and temperature ranges to thrive, making it particularly vulnerable to warming temperatures. Research suggests that by 2050, many traditional coffee-growing regions may become unsuitable for cultivation, leading to a quiet but profound shift in global coffee geography. This realization has sparked innovative approaches to cultivation and processing, as the industry seeks to preserve both its future and the environments that sustain it. As awareness of sustainability and environmental concerns grew in the coffee industry, attention increasingly turned to the rights and working conditions of those who cultivated and harvested the precious beans. Throughout coffee's history, labor conditions had often been challenging, from the colonial plantation systems to modern-day farming practices. In the late 20th century, a gradual awakening to these issues began to reshape the industry's approach to worker welfare. The stories of coffee workers' struggles for fair treatment echo through time, from the Brazilian fazendas of the 1920s to the Central American cooperatives of the 1980s. Organizations began emerging to advocate for better working conditions, fair wages, and improved safety standards for coffee farmers and processors. The United Farm Workers Movement, founded by Cesar Chavez, helped inspire similar movements throughout coffee-growing regions, leading to the establishment of worker-owned cooperatives and improved labor practices. In regions like Colombia and Guatemala, coffee workers slowly gained more rights through collective organizing. Small-scale farmers formed associations to negotiate better prices and working conditions. The gentle rustle of coffee cherries being carefully harvested began to symbolize not just the annual harvest, but also the dignity of work fairly compensated. The rise of specialty coffee culture in the 1990s and 2000s brought increased attention to the human story behind each cup. Roasters and cafes started sharing information about the farmers who grew their beans, putting faces and names to the people at origin. Programs developed to ensure living wages, access to education, and health care for coffee-growing communities. Organizations like the International Labor Rights Forum worked to eliminate child labor from coffee production and establish standards for worker safety. This focus on worker rights continues to evolve, with increasing emphasis on gender equality in coffee-growing regions, where women often perform much of the labor but historically received less recognition and compensation. The soft morning mist over coffee plantations now carries with it the promise of more equitable practices and better lives for those who tend the trees. As concerns over sustainability and ethical practices in coffee production grew, various certification programs emerged to provide standards and verification for conscientious coffee cultivation and trade. Among the earliest and most recognized was the Rainforest Alliance certification, established in 1992, which focused on protecting ecosystems and wildlife while ensuring sustainable livelihoods for farmers. The familiar green frog seal began appearing on coffee packages, offering consumers a gentle assurance that their morning brew supported environmental stewardship. Bird-friendly certification, developed by the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center in 1997, created specific requirements for shade-grown coffee, preserving the natural habitat of migratory birds while maintaining traditional coffee-growing methods. Under the cool canopy of native trees, coffee cherries ripened slowly, developing complex flavors while providing sanctuary to countless species of birds and other wildlife. Organic certification programs also gained prominence, with standards varying by country but generally requiring coffee to be grown without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. The transition period of 3 years allowed the soil to gradually regenerate its natural fertility, while farmers learned to work in harmony with nature's rhythms and cycles. UTZ certification, beginning in 2002, brought attention to both environmental and social aspects of coffee production, implementing a code of conduct that covered farm management, working conditions, and environmental care. Like gentle rainfall nourishing coffee plants, these programs slowly but steadily transformed the industry, creating transparent supply chains and verifiable standards. Perhaps most significantly, these certification programs helped bridge the gap between distant coffee farmers and conscious consumers, creating a shared understanding of coffee's journey from seed to cup. The various seals and certificates became silent storytellers, each one representing countless hours of careful cultivation, mindful harvesting, and responsible stewardship of both land and community. As the coffee industry evolved in the early 2000s, a revolutionary approach to sourcing beans emerged known as direct trade relationships. This intimate connection between roasters and farmers began to reshape how coffee moved from crop to cup, creating deeper understanding and mutual benefit for all involved. Like gentle morning mist rising from mountain coffee farms, these partnerships lifted both quality and consciousness in the industry. Leading roasters like Counterculture Coffee, Intelligentsia, and Stumptown began making regular trips to origin countries, walking among the coffee trees with farmers, sharing meals, and learning the intricate details of cultivation firsthand. These weren't just business transactions, but the cultivation of lasting friendships built on trust and shared passion for exceptional coffee. Roasters would often commit to purchasing a farm's entire harvest at premium prices, providing farmers with financial security and encouragement to focus on quality over quantity. The practice spread slowly but steadily through the specialty coffee world, like the careful nurturing of a young coffee plant. Roasters would spend weeks each year traveling to remote regions of Guatemala, Ethiopia, Colombia, and other growing regions, seeking out exceptional coffees and forming meaningful connections. They shared knowledge about processing techniques, cupping protocols, and quality control, while learning traditional farming methods that had been passed down through generations. These direct relationships created a transparent supply chain where everyone understood the journey of the coffee, from the careful picking of ripe cherries to the final roasted bean. Farmers received significantly higher prices than conventional market rates, often 2 to 3 times more, allowing them to reinvest in their farms and communities. The impact rippled outward like rings in still water, touching families, villages, and entire coffee-growing regions with improved living standards and sustainable practices that would nurture both the land and its people for generations to come. As we enter the new millennium, a profound transformation begins to take shape in coffee culture, known as the third wave. This movement, emerging in the early 2000s, brings an entirely new perspective to how we appreciate and understand coffee. Like wine connoisseurs studying terroir, third-wave enthusiasts begin exploring coffee's subtle complexity, celebrating its origins and unique characteristics with unprecedented attention to detail. In quiet cafes and roasteries across the world, baristas and roasters start treating coffee beans not as mere commodities, but as artisanal ingredients worthy of careful cultivation and preparation. The gentle whir of precise grinders and the soft hiss of carefully calibrated espresso machines become familiar sounds in specialty coffee shops, where lighter roasts allow the natural flavors of each bean to shine through. Companies like Intelligentsia, Counterculture, and Stumptown lead this peaceful revolution, introducing concepts like single-origin offerings, precise brewing parameters, and detailed tasting notes. Farmers' names appear on packaging, telling the stories of the people who tenderly nurture coffee plants at high elevations in distant lands. The soft rustle of craft paper bags carries these stories from farm to cup, each one containing beans roasted with extraordinary care and attention. This period sees the rise of pour-over brewing methods, with the measured drip of water through carefully ground beans becoming a meditative morning ritual for many. Baristas begin discussing concepts like extraction rates, particle size distribution, and water minerality, while coffee drinkers learn to appreciate subtle flavor notes of jasmine, bergamot, or wild berries in their cups. Digital technology enables greater connection between producers and consumers, as smartphones and social media allow coffee lovers to trace their beans' journey from specific mountainsides to their local cafes. This transparency creates a deeper, more meaningful relationship with each cup, fostering a gentle appreciation for coffee's remarkable journey from seed to sip. As the third-wave coffee movement matured, a renewed focus emerged on the delicate art of coffee roasting. Artisanal roasters began approaching their craft with the same reverence and precision that winemakers bring to their vintages. In small roasteries across the world, skilled craftspeople started paying careful attention to the subtle variations in bean density, moisture content, and origin characteristics that would influence their roasting profiles. The gentle hum of small-batch roasters became a familiar sound in urban neighborhoods as artisanal roasters moved away from the darker, more uniform roasts of previous decades. Instead, they began exploring lighter roasts that would highlight the unique flavor notes inherent in each variety of bean. The careful monitoring of time and temperature became an art form, with roasters maintaining detailed logs of each batch, noting the precise moment of first crack, and making minute adjustments to achieve their desired profile. Companies like Stumptown Coffee Roasters in Portland, Oregon, and Counterculture Coffee in Durham, North Carolina, pioneered this approach in the early 2000s. They introduced sophisticated roasting equipment like the Loring Smart Roast, which offered unprecedented control over the roasting process while reducing environmental impact. These artisanal roasters began sharing their knowledge openly, hosting public cuppings and educational sessions where customers could learn about the subtle differences between regions, varieties, and roast levels. The soft whisper of cooling beans, the gentle cascade of them being poured into storage containers, and the warm, complex aromas filling small roasteries became signature elements of this era. Roasters developed intimate relationships with their machines, learning to read the subtle sounds and smells that indicated the perfect development of their beans. This artisanal approach transformed coffee roasting from a purely commercial process into a respected culinary craft, one that would continue to evolve and refine as the industry moved forward. As the third wave coffee movement matured, one of its most significant contributions was the renewed emphasis on single-origin coffees, bringing us full circle back to coffee's earliest roots in Ethiopia. This approach celebrated the unique characteristics that emerge from specific regions, farms, and even individual lots of coffee, moving away from the traditional practice of blending beans from multiple sources. In the gentle hills of coffee-growing regions around the world, farmers began receiving recognition not just as producers, but as artisans whose terroir, cultivation methods, and processing techniques directly influence the final cup. Roasters started highlighting specific farms and cooperatives on their packaging, telling the stories of places like Ethiopia's Yirgacheffe region, with its delicate floral notes, or the volcanic soils of Guatemala's Antigua Valley, which impart distinct chocolate and spice characteristics to their beans. This focus on origin brought with it a deeper appreciation for the natural factors that shape coffee's flavor: the altitude at which the beans grow, the composition of the soil, the amount of rainfall and sunshine, and even the specific variety of coffee plant being cultivated. Coffee lovers began to experience these subtle differences much like wine enthusiasts appreciate different vintages and vineyards. The movement gained momentum throughout the 2010s, as coffee shops started offering rotating selections of single-origin coffees, often preparing them through careful pour-over methods that highlighted their distinct qualities. Customers learned to distinguish the bright, citrusy notes of a Kenyan coffee from the earthy, full-bodied character of a Sumatran bean. This educational aspect created a deeper connection between consumers and the distant lands where their coffee was grown, fostering a greater understanding of coffee's journey from seed to cup. As coffee culture evolved into the 21st century, a remarkable renaissance in brewing methods emerged, blending traditional techniques with innovative new approaches. The gentle art of coffee preparation became a focal point of experimentation and refinement, with baristas and enthusiasts exploring ever more precise ways to coax the perfect cup from their carefully sourced beans. The pour-over method, though dating back to 1908 when Melita Bentz invented her paper filter system, experienced a graceful revival. Baristas began approaching this seemingly simple technique with scientific precision, paying attention to water temperature, pour patterns, and timing. The Hario V60, with its elegant spiral ridges and precise angle, became a symbol of this methodical approach to brewing. In the peaceful corners of specialty cafes, the siphon brewing method, reminiscent of 19th-century coffee preparation, made a quiet comeback. Its mesmerizing process, where water rises through vapor pressure to meet the grounds before settling back as brewed coffee, captured the imagination of those seeking both theater and taste in their coffee experience. The AeroPress, invented in 2005 by Alan Adler, introduced a gentle revolution in personal brewing. This simple yet versatile device combined the pressure principles of espresso with full immersion brewing, creating a smooth, clean cup that could be prepared almost anywhere. Meanwhile, the slow, meditative practice of cold brew became increasingly popular, with its smooth, less acidic profile appealing to those seeking a gentler coffee experience. In professional settings, the development of precision brewing equipment continued. Temperature-controlled kettles, scales measuring to a tenth of a gram, and refractometers for measuring extraction became common tools, transforming the art of coffee brewing into a careful science. Yet beneath all this innovation remained the timeless pursuit of bringing out the best in each bean, honoring the journey from seed to cup with each thoughtfully prepared serving. As coffee culture evolved into the 21st century, it increasingly became recognized as a sophisticated culinary art form, much like fine wine or artisanal cheese. Baristas began to be viewed not simply as beverage servers, but as skilled craftspeople who understood the delicate interplay of variables that create the perfect cup. This transformation was particularly evident in the careful attention paid to every aspect of preparation, from the precise temperature of the water to the geometric patterns created in milk foam. In the early 2000s, pioneering figures like James Hoffman and Tim Wendelboe elevated coffee preparation to new heights, approaching each cup with the methodical precision of a chef. They introduced concepts like flavor wheels and tasting notes, helping people appreciate the subtle nuances in different coffee varieties, much as one might discuss the complexities of fine wine. The gentle art of cupping became more widespread, with enthusiasts gathering in quiet rooms to thoughtfully sample different beans, noting delicate hints of chocolate, berries, or citrus fruits. Coffee competitions began showcasing increasingly sophisticated presentations, with baristas crafting signature drinks that incorporated elements of molecular gastronomy and creative culinary techniques. These artful creations might feature house-made syrups, carefully selected spices, or complementary flavor infusions, all designed to enhance and highlight the natural characteristics of the coffee itself. The rise of coffee as culinary art also saw the emergence of coffee pairing events, where specific beans would be thoughtfully matched with desserts or breakfast pastries, creating harmonious flavor combinations that enhance both the food and beverage. Roasters began working more closely with pastry chefs and food artisans, developing deeper understanding of how coffee's complex flavors could complement and enhance other culinary experiences. This elevation of coffee to culinary art status reflected a broader cultural shift toward appreciating the depth and complexity of everyday pleasures, transforming the simple act of drinking coffee into an opportunity for mindful enjoyment and sensory exploration. As we drift into the modern era of coffee science and innovation, the 2010s brought remarkable advances in our understanding of coffee's complexity. Scientists and researchers began employing sophisticated analytical tools to unlock the deeper mysteries of coffee's chemistry, exploring the thousands of compounds that contribute to its distinctive flavors and aromas. In climate-controlled laboratories across the globe, researchers utilized gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and advanced sensory analysis to map coffee's molecular landscape. Their gentle explorations revealed how different roast profiles affect the formation of various aromatic compounds, while careful studies of water chemistry helped explain the subtle interplay between minerals and extraction. The rise of precision farming technology brought new innovations to coffee cultivation. Farmers began using satellite imagery and soil sensors to monitor their crops, while mobile apps helped track weather patterns and predict optimal harvest times. These soft technological touches helped produce ever more consistent, high-quality beans while promoting more sustainable growing practices. In roasting, The emergence of computer-controlled machines with detailed data logging capabilities allowed for unprecedented precision. Artisan roasters could now track minute temperature changes throughout the roasting process, creating perfectly repeatable profiles that brought out the best in each unique coffee origin. Meanwhile, brewing science continued its quiet evolution. Researchers studied extraction kinetics, examining how factors like grind size, water temperature, and pressure affect the way flavors develop in the cup. This led to refinements in both commercial and home brewing equipment, with new machines incorporating sophisticated temperature and flow control systems. The scientific understanding of coffee storage also deepened, as studies revealed the complex ways that oxygen, moisture, and light affect coffee's aging process. This knowledge helped develop better packaging solutions and storage recommendations to preserve coffee's delicate flavors longer. Through all these advances, coffee continued its transformation from a simple commodity into a thoroughly understood craft product, though always maintaining its mysterious ability to capture our imagination and bring people together in shared moments of warmth and connection. As our modern understanding of coffee science has deepened, researchers have turned their attention to one of the most fundamental aspects of coffee, its genetic makeup. The quiet laboratories and research stations where scientists study coffee genetics tell a fascinating story of discovery and preservation. In the serene highlands of Ethiopia, where coffee first emerged, researchers have documented over 6,000 distinct varieties of wild coffee plants, each carrying unique genetic traits shaped by centuries of natural adaptation. In the early 2000s, an international team of scientists began the painstaking work of mapping the coffee genome, particularly focusing on Coffea arabica and Coffea canephora. Their careful analysis revealed that Arabica coffee resulted from a natural hybridization between Robusta and another species, Coffea eugenioides, occurring thousands of years ago in the gentle mountains of Ethiopia. This understanding has helped researchers develop more resilient coffee varieties that can withstand changing climatic conditions while maintaining the beloved flavors that coffee drinkers cherish. The World Coffee Research Institute, established in 2012, has been quietly conducting groundbreaking genetic research, creating a detailed catalog of coffee varieties and their characteristics. In their peaceful research gardens, scientists observe how different genetic traits express themselves, from the plant's resistance to diseases to the subtle flavor compounds that develop in its beans. This work has led to the development of F1 hybrid varieties, combining the hardiness of Robusta with the superior taste of Arabica. As climate change poses increasing challenges to coffee cultivation, genetic research has become crucial for the future of coffee. Scientists are identifying genes responsible for heat tolerance, disease resistance, and drought adaptation, working methodically to ensure that future generations can continue enjoying their morning cup of coffee. This careful preservation and study of coffee's genetic diversity represents humanity's commitment to protecting and understanding this beloved plant that has shaped our history for centuries. As our understanding of coffee has deepened over the decades, researchers have conducted thousands of studies examining its effects on human health, leading to fascinating and sometimes contradictory findings. In the quiet laboratories and research centers around the world, scientists have carefully analyzed the complex relationship between coffee consumption and well-being, gradually unveiling the subtle ways this ancient beverage influences our bodies. During the 1970s and 1980s, early studies often cast coffee in a concerning light, suggesting potential risks to heart health and other systems. However, as research methods became more sophisticated and sample sizes grew larger, a more nuanced picture began to emerge. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, long-term observational studies started revealing unexpected protective effects associated with moderate coffee consumption. The warm aroma of coffee, once considered merely pleasant, began to be understood as arising from hundreds of bioactive compounds. Scientists discovered that coffee contains significant amounts of antioxidants, particularly chlorogenic acid, which may help protect against cellular damage. Large-scale studies, such as those conducted by Harvard School of Public Health, found associations between regular coffee consumption and reduced risks of certain conditions, including type 2 diabetes, liver disease, and some forms of cancer. Perhaps most soothingly, research has shown that the gentle ritual of drinking coffee may contribute to cognitive health. Studies conducted in peaceful research centers across Europe and North America have suggested that the familiar comfort of a daily cup might help protect against cognitive decline in later years. Modern research continues to reveal new aspects of coffee's complex effects on human health, with each study adding another layer to our understanding of this remarkable beverage that has accompanied human civilization for so many centuries. As we've learned more about coffee's potential health benefits, this knowledge has begun to influence how people approach their daily coffee routines, adding yet another dimension to coffee's rich cultural significance. As we drift through the evolution of coffee culture, let's explore how brewing technology has transformed over time, bringing new dimensions to this beloved beverage. The gentle art of brewing has seen remarkable advances, each innovation adding layers to our understanding of coffee's potential. In the 1940s, the development of the vacuum coffee maker brought a new level of precision to home brewing. Its elegant design used vapor pressure and vacuum to produce a clean, bright cup that highlighted coffee's subtle notes. The 1950s welcomed the electric percolator into countless homes, its familiar burbling sound becoming the morning soundtrack for millions. A significant shift occurred in 1969 when Mr. Coffee introduced the first automatic drip coffee maker for home use. This innovation gently heated water to the ideal temperature and distributed it evenly over the grounds, creating a consistently pleasant brew. The 1970s saw the rise of the French press, offering a full-bodied experience that preserved coffee's essential oils. More recent decades have brought increasingly sophisticated brewing methods. The AeroPress, invented in 2005, combined pressure brewing with paper filtration, creating a smooth, rich cup without bitterness. Pour-over brewing, though rooted in early 20th century methods, has experienced a renaissance in the third wave movement, with precisely engineered kettles and drippers allowing for meticulous control over every aspect of the brew. Smart coffee makers emerged in the 2010s, incorporating Wi-Fi connectivity and precision temperature control. These machines can be programmed to match specific roast profiles and brewing parameters, ensuring each cup reaches its full potential. Innovative cold brew systems have also evolved, from simple immersion methods to sophisticated slow drip towers that create smooth, low-acid coffee over many hours. The most recent developments include AI-powered brewing systems that can learn user preferences and adjust variables accordingly, while sustainable brewing technologies focus on reducing water and energy consumption without compromising quality. As our journey through coffee's rich history draws to a close, let's explore the gentle awakening of sustainability consciousness that has transformed the industry in recent decades. In the soft morning light of the new millennium, coffee farmers and industry leaders began embracing innovative approaches to ensure that our beloved beverage could continue to flourish while protecting the delicate ecosystems that nurture it. Among the peaceful hills of Costa Rica, the first carbon-neutral coffee farms emerged around 2011, carefully balancing their environmental impact through thoughtful cultivation methods and renewable energy use. In the misty mountains of Colombia, farmers began implementing water-conserving processing techniques, reducing their usage from traditional 40 liters per kilogram of coffee to just 5 liters through innovative washing stations. The quiet revolution of shade-grown coffee gained momentum, with ancient techniques finding new appreciation. Under the gentle canopy of native trees, coffee plants thrived alongside bird populations and beneficial insects, creating harmonious ecosystems that protected soil health and preserved biodiversity. Organizations like the Rainforest Alliance and bird-friendly certification programs helped guide these sustainable practices, their influence spreading like morning dew across growing regions. In recent years, roasters and cafes have embraced circular economy principles, finding creative uses for spent coffee grounds in everything from mushroom cultivation to biofuel production. Companies like BioBean in London transform tons of coffee waste into clean energy, while smaller roasters create garden compost and natural beauty products. The development of drought-resistant varieties and water-smart irrigation systems has helped farmers adapt to changing climate patterns, ensuring that future generations can continue enjoying their morning cup of coffee. As we rest in the knowledge that sustainability innovations continue to evolve, we can appreciate how far we've come from those first Ethiopian coffee cherries to today's mindful cultivation practices, creating a legacy of environmental stewardship that will nurture coffee culture for generations to come. As our journey through the rich history of coffee draws to a close, let us pause to reflect on the remarkable story we have witnessed, a tale that spans continents and centuries, flowing like a great river through the landscape of human civilization. From those first mysterious berries discovered in the Ethiopian highlands to the precise pour-over rituals of today's artisanal cafes, we have traced an extraordinary path of discovery, innovation, and connection. Like rings in an ancient tree, each era of coffee's history tells us something profound about the human experience. In those early Ethiopian mountains, we saw how observation and curiosity led to revelation. The shepherd Chaldi and his dancing goats showing us how the most meaningful discoveries often come through careful attention to the natural world. The early Sufi mystics who embraced coffee as an aid to their spiritual practices remind us that humans have long sought ways to expand consciousness and deepen contemplation. As coffee flowed outward from its birthplace, carried along ancient trade routes like precious cargo on a midnight sea, we witnessed how a simple beverage could transform societies. In the coffee houses of the Ottoman Empire, Cairo, and Mecca, we saw the first flowerings of what would become a global phenomenon, spaces where people could gather, share ideas, and dream of new possibilities. These early meeting places remind us that humans have always yearned for connection, for places to share stories and build community. The European coffee revolution shows us how cultural exchange, even when born of conflict and colonialism, can lead to unexpected flourishing. In those Enlightenment-era coffee houses, where great minds debated philosophy and politics over steaming cups, we see how coffee created space for human thought to expand and evolve. The rise of cafe culture across the continent reminds us that some human needs, for stimulation, for conversation, for a moment of respite, transcend all boundaries of time and place. As we followed coffee's journey across oceans through colonial expansion, we confronted difficult truths about human nature, how the desire for profit and power can lead to exploitation and suffering. Yet even in these darker chapters, we find stories of resilience, of people working to build better systems and create positive change. The development of fair trade and direct relationships between farmers and roasters shows how modern coffee culture strives to right historical wrongs and create more equitable connections. The Industrial Revolution brought mechanization and mass production, changing coffee from an artisanal craft to a standardized commodity. Yet like a pendulum swinging back, we've witnessed the return to careful cultivation and preparation through the waves of modern coffee culture. From first waves focus on convenience, through second waves elevation of the cafe experience, to third wave celebration of coffee as culinary art. Each era builds upon what came before while seeking something new. In today's coffee landscape, We see all these historical threads woven together into a rich tapestry. The Ethiopian farmer carefully tending her coffee trees uses knowledge passed down through generations while incorporating new sustainable practices. The artisanal roaster in Seattle or London or Tokyo honors traditional craftsmanship while leveraging modern technology to achieve unprecedented precision. The neighborhood cafe serves as both a timeless gathering place and a showcase for contemporary innovation. As we rest here in the present moment, we can appreciate how coffee continues to evolve while remaining essentially unchanged. Though we now have sophisticated machines and scientific understanding of every chemical process, the fundamental experience, the aroma of freshly ground beans, the warmth of the cup in our hands, the moment of connection over a shared drink, would be familiar to those first coffee drinkers centuries ago. The story of coffee reminds us that human progress is not a straight line but a spiral, returning again and again to essential truths while reaching toward new horizons. We see how innovation and tradition can coexist, how global commerce can support local community, how individual craft can flourish alongside mass production. In studying this history, we learn not just about a beverage, but about ourselves, our creativity, our adaptability, our endless capacity for finding new ways to connect and create. As you drift toward sleep, consider how your own daily coffee ritual connects you to this vast human story. When you grind your morning beans, you echo countless others who have performed this same act across centuries. When you meet a friend at a cafe, you participate in a social tradition older than any nation. When you savor that perfect cup, you experience something that has brought pleasure and inspiration to generations before you. Let your thoughts flow gently through these historical streams, feeling the connection to all those who have been part of coffee's journey, the farmers who have tended the trees, the traders who have transported the beans across vast distances, the roasters who have carefully crafted their art, the baristas who have perfected their preparations, and the countless millions who have found comfort, energy, and joy in their daily cup. Consider how future generations will add their own chapters to this ongoing story. Perhaps they will develop new sustainable farming methods to protect coffee from climate change. Maybe they will discover new ways to prepare and enjoy coffee that we cannot yet imagine. They might create new spaces for coffee-centered community that blend traditional hospitality with emerging social needs. As your consciousness begins to soften, imagine coffee's journey as a great river, flowing from those ancient Ethiopian highlands through time and space, gathering tributaries of human experience, innovation, and tradition. Feel yourself floating gently on that river, carried by the current of history toward dreams of what may come. Let the warmth of countless shared cups, the quiet moments of contemplation, the celebrations and conversations, the dawning inspirations, and the simple daily pleasures of coffee's long history wrap around you like a comfortable blanket. As sleep approaches, rest in the knowledge that you are part of this continuing story, one that connects us across time, across cultures, across all the distances between those first coffee trees and this present moment. And as you settle into deepening relaxation, let your last thoughts be of gratitude for all those who have contributed to coffee's rich heritage, for the simple pleasure of your own daily cup, and for the endless cycle of growth, harvest, craft, and enjoyment that continues to bring people together in the most fundamental of human connections. Sleep now, knowing that tomorrow brings another dawn, another cup, another moment in coffee's endless story.